Phoenix Nights. Chapter 830. In the sky, the sun emitted a blood-red light. Although it was not very dazzling, it gave people a strange feeling. The red light shone on the blood-red waves on the ground. Upon closer inspection, it was actually not waves, but a tide, a monster tide. These monsters were emitting a faint flame. They were not very big, and their attack power was not very strong. However, their jumping ability was very shocking. However, their numbers were extremely terrifying. Everywhere they passed, it was all scorched earth, leaving no trace of life. At the top of a hill far away from the monster horde, there was a small city. There were only a dozen or so people in the city. There were magicians wearing light armor and wielding staffs. There were also heavily armored warriors. There were also 2 huge metal dolls that were about 10 meters tall. On the shoulders of the dolls, there were actually 2 dark gnomes. The combat power of each of them far surpassed those small monsters, but in front of the terrifying monster horde, only a small wave was needed to turn these people into nothingness. In the face of such a terrifying number of enemies, everyone's faces were filled with nervousness and seriousness. "Captain, why is there still no news from Nera's side?" a magician asked anxiously. The captain was a burly man, his eyes shining with shrewdness. Obviously, he was not a simple-minded person. "Don't worry, our mission is to defend for 3 hours. Previously, because the monster tide was too strong, we were forced to give up the town of Kata. This small lonely mountain city is the last line of defense. Whether Nera succeeds or not, we must defend here, or else all the hard work before will be in vain. Regis, how long until the monsters reach here?" A short and vigorous warrior said. "At most 5 minutes. Everyone in position," the burly man ordered. "This is our last hope, we must defend it." About 5 minutes later, the ground began to tremble horribly. Countless red monsters had already rushed down the mountain, swarming towards the small city. The magic crystal cannons in the small city began to shoot out intense light, and the nearby monsters were all turned into nothingness. However, the empty space was filled up by the monsters behind in the blink of an eye. Whether it was the magic of the magicians or the arrows of the warriors, it was insignificant to this group of monsters that were like a tide. Some monsters had already climbed or jumped onto the city wall, and casualties began to appear in the team. When they saw that the situation was critical, the 2 metal puppets jumped down the wall without hesitation and rushed into the oncoming monster horde. They stomped the small monsters into meat paste, and the barrels in their palms continuously fired angry flames to harvest the enemy's lives. They attracted the monsters' attention, and the wave, at the very front, started to change its defense line. Unfortunately, these 2 giant puppets did not manage to walk too far before they were drowned by the beast tide, leaving no trace behind. Not only the captain, but everyone's eyes were red. In this battlefield, no one treated the 2 goblins as cowardly and incompetent trash, but as true comrades and companions. The 2 goblins also used their own actions to prove this point. Seeing more and more monsters approaching the city wall, the team members revealed expressions of grief and indignation. Since they were going to die today, they might as well fight. At the critical moment, a vast expanse of whiteness appeared on the side. It was the rushing river, like a roaring water dragon, swallowing a large number of small monsters. The spirits of the people who thought they were going to die were instantly lifted. Na Lu succeeded. He successfully blasted open the embankment. Under the impact of the river, the group of monsters was split into 2. The surviving team members fought bravely and finally lasted until the stipulated time of the mission. Time flew, and everyone instantly turned into bursts of white light and disappeared. At the same time, everyone in a certain dimension heard a notification. "The red team has completed the first chapter of the Blood Prelude. There are 9 surviving team members with AC rating. All team members will be rewarded with a Grade C white crystal treasure chest, which can be used to draw equipment or materials. As the first team to complete the chapter, everyone will be rewarded with an additional 10 reputation points and a Grade C amethyst treasure chest." It turned out that it was a dungeon in the magic game Endless Warrior Online. The entire process could be described as thrilling, but in the end, they had relied on their willpower and intelligence to complete the mission. The first kill of the first chapter of the Blood Prelude was announced by the entire server, and it caused a lot of discussion among the players. There's actually someone who completed the first chapter of the Blood Prelude so quickly. Our team has also tried the Blood Prelude, but we were all wiped out in less than 10 minutes. The difficulty level is ridiculously simple. I wonder how the red team completed it. Should we go and ask them? What's the use of asking them? They definitely won't tell you. Although the conditions to clear the dungeon are fixed, the map changes randomly. Even if the red team enters the dungeon again, they might not be able to complete it again in a different terrain. A grade C amethyst treasure chest. I wonder what kind of good equipment it will contain. There's no point in being jealous. However, the red team only completed the first chapter, so the reward is limited. The Poison Dragon team even obtained a grade C black crystal treasure chest for the first kill of the Cyclops boss. Let's just work hard on training and leveling up, and then get the equipment. These were just a microcosm of the game. Unknowingly, Endless Warrior Online had completely integrated into the lives of the demons, becoming an almost inseparable part of them. Correspondingly, it was not only the entertainment and training gains that the players obtained, but also the massive amount of power of faith gained by the initiator, Grandmaster Aguile. The power of faith was gratifying, but Chinrui's mind was now focused on one place, the City of Stars in the Blue Lake mountain range. It had been more than 2 months since the end of the alchemy contest. During this period, Chinrui spent 90% of his time in the City of Stars. In the past week, he had been in retreat and devoted himself to the upgrade of the alchemy castle. After various adjustments and preparations, the City of Stars had finally been successfully upgraded to level 3. In the classification of the ancient alchemy civilization, level 1 and level 2 civilizations belong to the fortress level. After entering level 3 civilizations, they could already be called cities. Above level 4, they were capital level. This was a qualitative upgrade, and 2 new facilities were built: the Enhanced Creature Warehouse and the Culture Pool. The Enhanced Creature Warehouse could strengthen the various qualities of the city's alchemy life and increase the production rate of chief-level alchemy life. The function of the Culture Pool was more powerful, and it was divided into 3 major parts: energy cultivation, material cultivation, and biological cultivation. Energy cultivation could transform living organisms into the life energy needed by the alchemy civilization. In Deluta's diary, there was an experience of slaughtering an entire city of enemies and throwing all their corpses into the energy cultivation pool to transform energy. Chinrui had an almost inexhaustible supply of aura fruits, and aura fruits could be transformed into the highest level of energy blocks, so there was no need for such a terrifying transformation. It was worth mentioning that the quality and quantity of energy blocks transformed by the energy cultivation pool were far higher than that of ordinary converters. Material cultivation was the use of energy and existing materials to produce or transform special materials needed by the alchemy civilization. This was exactly what Chinrui urgently needed. For example, the material needed for the giant crystal beast was dragon power essence. Dragon power essence was the essence condensed by the souls of dragons that did not dissipate after they died. It carried the dragon's might and a small amount of soul power when they were alive. It was very rare. Even though Chinrui had latched onto his father-in-law, Augustus, the amount he could obtain from the exchange was extremely limited. Now that he had the material cultivation pool, he could use other materials to create simulated dragon power essence. Although the effect was not as good as the real dragon power essence, it was enough to create the giant crystal beast. As for the giant crystal beast created by the original dragon power essence, it could be strengthened by the enhanced biological warehouse, and its strength would be closer to the boss level. The biological cultivation pool could carry out advanced biological research and experiments. This target was not only for alchemy life, but the biological cultivation pool was also one of the necessary facilities to create titans. After the promotion, the Central Life Crystal, Crystal Phoenix, had a significant leap in both control and calculation abilities. After testing, Crystal Phoenix could deal with some problems in Endless Warrior Online very intelligently. The benefits of the city upgrade were far more than these. Crystal Phoenix automatically obtained the authority information of the Level 3 Life Crystal, including some blueprints of city-level alchemy weapons. It could upgrade the original fortress-level weapons. It just so happened that the original weapons had not been repaired because they were damaged, so they were being rebuilt now. The alchemy creatures that could be controlled in a Level 3 city were twice that of a Level 2 fortress. There were 60,000 gremlin servants, 30,000 crystal beasts, 15,000 lamp spirits, 3,000 assemble puppets, and 300 giant crystal beasts. Not considering the super combat power, once this lineup was fully produced, it was enough to build a country or let the fallen angel empire dominate the demon realm. Unless the Bloody Empire and the Shadow Empire joined forces, the combat power of a single country was definitely not his opponent. Deterrence by force was necessary, but war was only a last resort. Moreover, the current materials were still extremely scarce, and the level of the energy cultivation pool was not high. It would take a lot of time to fully gather the auxiliary materials and create the materials needed for the troops. If it was upgraded to level 4, the speed would be greatly improved. Of course, Chenrei did not have this extravagant hope now. Fortunately, this time he had more time than the Warlock Fortress battle. There was still a little more than half of the 2-year deadline of the Armistice Agreement. Whether it was the construction of the City of Stars or personal training, the time was completely in time. After arranging the remaining work, Chenrei left the Central Control Palace. At this time, it was already night outside. When he lifted the closure of the City of Stars, he unexpectedly saw Kia with an anxious face. The succubus maid's first sentence shocked Chenrei. "Something happened to Rala!" When Chenrei went to the human world, Rala closed the Rainbow Valley to comprehend the mystery of the kingdom. However, just 2 days ago, the Rainbow Valley's space channel connected to the residence suddenly trembled. Countless terrifying elements were revealed from it. If it weren't for Paglio, Dodo and others who happened to be in the house to suppress it in time, the entire residence would have been razed to the ground. The elements gradually weakened after a while. Just when everyone thought it was fine, the Rainbow Valley's space channel suddenly collapsed, and the entrance disappeared. At that time, Paglio and others all felt that the elements leaking from the Rainbow Valley were not only violent, but also abnormally chaotic. It was obviously out of control. Coupled with the collapse of the channel, it could basically be determined that there was a problem with Rala's retreat. The trouble was that the Rainbow Valley's channel had collapsed, and even the channel on the capital side was the same. Everyone couldn't find the entrance for a long time, so they had to wait for Chenrei to come out of the City of Stars. The Elemental Kingdom was a powerful kingdom in the memory of the fairy dragon's bloodline. It could build a kingdom with elements as believers. Elements were omnipresent. The power of this kind of kingdom was far better than its peers, but it was also the most difficult. It required an extremely profound understanding of the element's origin. Even for the Fairy Dragon clan, there were only a few successful ones. Rala's choice was not a single element, but the strongest 6-element kingdom. The difficulty was naturally the greatest. Every time an element was added, the difficulty and danger of training would increase exponentially. The elemental source power was the purest source power of the Elemental King. Rala could use the source power to greatly enhance the perception of the Elemental Kingdom and reduce the danger. Unfortunately, since Chenrei returned from the human world, Rala's retreat was still not over, so the wind source power and light source power at hand could not be handed over to her. Unexpectedly, something happened now. Chenrei knew about Rala's retreat. The purpose of this retreat was not to directly break through to the kingdom level, but to further feel and comprehend the realm of the kingdom so that the chances of breaking through in the future would increase. However, the danger of the 6-element elemental kingdom was far greater than that of an ordinary kingdom, so Chenrei did not know what dangers Rala would encounter, but judging from the collapse of the space channel, it was definitely not a small problem. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel anxious. He greeted Kia, opened the Stargate, and returned to the house in the Dark Moon City as soon as possible. When Qinrui returned to the courtyard, he found that the space channel entrance that was originally set up in the garden had completely disappeared. There was no trace at all. After asking Paglio and others about the situation at the time, he made a prompt decision to ride the incubus beast's little black horse and rush north at full speed. Now that the space channel of the house had disappeared, the only way to enter the Rainbow Valley was the desolate valley in the outskirts of the capital. When Qinrui first encountered Rala, he entered from there. To reach the outskirts of the capital, he must pass through the north to the Red Spirit Estate. This was not something that could be completed in 1 or 2 days. In terms of short distance, Qinrui's flying skill was far better than the little black horse, but it was not good for long-distance running. The little black horse, who had been eating devil fruits and aura fruits for many years, had already reached the peak of the Great Demon King level. It was only a step away from the Demon Emperor level. Its physique and strength even surpassed the average Demon Emperor level, but it had not awakened the territory talent in its bloodline, so it was not a real Demon Emperor level demonic beast. Unfortunately, even if the little black horse successfully advances to the Demon Emperor, it is just the lowest strength mascot in the house. The little black horse felt the anxiety of its master, so it couldn't care less about shocking the world. It displayed its strongest form and began to run at full speed. The horse's hooves were shining with flames like red lightning cutting through the night. Chapter 831. After a few days of traveling day and night, Qinrui finally arrived at the outskirts of the fallen angel capital. In a hurry, he flew here on the last day. The little black horse was placed in the Red Spirit Estate. This valley in the outskirts of the capital was also called the Rainbow Valley because every time a rainbow appeared, Rala's valley would appear. When the rainbow disappeared, the valley would disappear again. Some people who entered by mistake would be teleported out. There was no fixed time for the appearance of the Rainbow Valley. Sometimes it was a few months, sometimes it was a few years, sometimes it was hundreds of years. In fact, the so-called rainbow was caused by the loosening of the space enchantment caused by the explosion accident in Rala's experiment. This kind of accident greatly consolidated the stability of the space after Qinrui completed the ancient runes slate. Theoretically, it would not happen again. The valley area had been controlled by the Imperial Guards sent by Jia. Several magic circle masters headed by Stiller were studying how to open the space entrance, but almost 10 days had passed, and they still had not found a way. Stiller was Rala's nominal disciple, and she also learned some corresponding knowledge. Unfortunately, the level of the Rainbow Valley's enchantment was still too high for her. Of course, Qinrui was an exception. In the past, Qinrui once opened the space node of the Rainbow Valley with the knowledge of dragon inscription and magic circle. After becoming lovers with Rala, the two learned and studied ancient runes together to promote and improve each other. The new enchantment of the Rainbow Valley was jointly arranged by the couple. Qinrui had long discovered the guards in the valley. He changed into a mask and landed. The guards were lamp spirits. They felt the breath of their master and saluted in unison. This action made Stiller and others immediately confirm the identity of Royal Highness Wang Fu. Royal Highness Wang Fu had now become the legend of the fallen angel empire. Whether it was his strength or the identity of the alchemy Grand Master, it was enough for everyone to look up to. Stiller, you go back to the capital first. The guards will stay here for the time being. Stiller was Rala's disciple. She knew the relationship between Qinrui and Rala, so she didn't dare to ask more. She bowed respectfully and left the valley with several magic circle masters. Qinrui ordered the lamp spirits to expand the guard range. He took a deep breath, calmed down his anxiety, and began to crack. There was not much suspense in opening the space node. The remaining guards were all on his side, so Qinrui had no scruples. One by one, strange runes jumped out from his fingers and scattered. It was the ancient runes condensed by star power. Under the touch of these runes, several white light spots appeared in the void. The white light spots were connected by lines of light, faintly showing a huge space outline. Since the Rainbow Valley was almost destroyed by Agila's last time, Chenrui and Rala reinforced the space again. Even a demigod powerhouse might not be able to break it. As one of the builders of the space barrier, Chenrui did not spend too much time to determine the location of the entrance in the invisible void. Under the use of his means, a barrier's channel slowly opened. As soon as the barrier's channel was opened, a terrifying breath leaked out. This was an extremely sharp power. Chenrui was caught off guard. His mask was instantly cut into pieces, and his cloak was also torn apart. The ground seemed to be swept by countless blades. There were crisscrossed cracks all over. Fortunately, he had dismissed the lamp spirits far away early, otherwise casualties would be inevitable. As soon as Chenrui's mind moved, a translucent round cover appeared around him, blocking the sharp breath. The sharp breath changed again, transforming into a thick and dignified breath. The scarred ground seemed to be under heavy pressure, and it became shorter for no reason. Those cracks became huge cracks that spread quickly. The power of wind elements and earth elements. Chenrui wiped the 2 bloodstains on his cheeks and frowned tightly. Although he didn't know magic, he could clearly feel that these 2 elemental powers were violent and chaotic. They seemed to be uncontrollable. Under the interference of this strong elemental power, the entrance of the channel barrier could not be maintained stable. It might close at any time, and it would be difficult to open it again. Chenrui rushed in against the manic elemental power without hesitation. As soon as he entered the channel, the entrance disappeared with a bang. Then, the outline and nodes of the space also disappeared, leaving only the amazing traces of destruction on the ground. Rainbow Valley. There were chaotic 6 elemental powers everywhere. Sometimes it was calm, sometimes it was violent. Especially those elements that naturally repelled each other. Once they intersected, it would produce a terrifying destructive power. Chenrui activated the defensive shield and moved forward carefully. Many of the originally arranged defensive magic circles had been destroyed by the powerful elemental power, especially those key points. Once they changed, the entire magic circle would undergo unpredictable changes. Even the person who arranged it had to be cautious. Boom! The dragon inscription circle on the left exploded uncontrollably. The powerful destructive power caused more cracks on the defensive shield. Although the defensive shield had the ability to heal itself, Chenrui was worried about Rala's safety. He couldn't wait at all now, so he simply rushed forward against the power of the explosion. The concentration of the elements was getting stronger and stronger. It had reached an extremely terrifying level. It was almost about to materialize. He could actually see the faint light with the naked eye. Chenrui sensed something. He turned his head abruptly and saw a blurry phantasm in the woods on the right. Before he could see it clearly, he felt an overwhelming magic wave pressure. This pressure was so strong that the defensive shield collapsed instantly. Chenrui instinctively felt a strong crisis. His figure flashed and appeared in the distance. Now his strength had reached the peak stage of the demon overlord. Coupled with the law that he realized from the polar star transformation, he had vaguely mastered some of the teleportation skills that could only be performed by the king level. However, he was still a little slow. His face was pale. He was obviously suffering from internal injuries. Compared with the injury, Chenrui was most surprised by the information displayed in the analytical eyes just now. Race, dragons, fairy dragon, comprehensive strength assessment, SS, S++, physique, S+, strength, S+, spirit, SS, S++, speed, S++. Analysis, magic physique, elemental talent, spell mastery. Danger level, extremely dangerous. SS. Rala is already at the king level? Chenrui was shocked, then he immediately reacted. No! Judging from the display of analytical eyes, Rala's true strength has not reached the real king level. She has only reached the king level temporarily for some reason, just like the light pope can exert the king level strength with the help of the faith power of the Temple of God of Seals. So, what's going on with Rala's power? At this time, the phantasm floating in the air had become clear. This was a figure about 6 meters long. It looked like dragons from the outside, but it was different from the rough and ferocious feeling of ordinary dragons. This dragon's appearance was extraordinarily delicate. It faintly glowed with colorful light. Its purple eyes were very big, and there was a pair of huge butterfly wings on its back. This pair of butterfly wings gave people a feeling of incorporeal. It was somewhat similar to the angel wings that Chen Rui had seen. This is the body of the fairy dragon. Although he already had the most intimate relationship with Rala, it was the first time for Chen Rui to see her dragon body. Due to her talent, the fairy dragon who did not need close combat looked very delicate. Among the dragons, the fairy dragon was the most approachable. Her appearance and temperament looked kind and cute. However, that was an ordinary fairy dragon. Rala's name of Mad Scientist was famous among the demon realm dragons. Even the peak stage of the demon overlord dragon like Paglio and Danielle had to flee when they saw her. The flames around Rala flickered with terrifying and chaotic elemental power. The trees in the forest were sometimes scorched and sometimes frozen into ice as if they were out of control. "Rala!" Chen Rui shouted. As soon as Rala raised her head, Chen Rui immediately felt a terrifying spirit power coming to his face. Almost in the next second, his eyes turned into a fiery red. A terrifying spherical flame wrapped Chen Rui, and he whizzed into a huge rock behind him. The fire elements raged wildly in the form of burning, and the huge crystal rock, which was known for its sturdiness, was quickly melted into a human-shaped hole. The Fire Phoenix Divine Mark on Chen Rui immediately played a role. The Fire Phoenix Divine Mark could reduce fire damage by 90%, and there was a 10% chance of complete immunity. Even though it was reduced to 10%, he still felt the terrifying burning power. If it weren't for his magic resistance physique, perhaps this 10% power would have seriously injured him. Country-level damage. Chen Rui, who had several experiences with country-level powerhouses, immediately determined the strength of this flame. Fortunately, it was a fire element attack. If it was another element, without activating the polar transformation, it would definitely be life-threatening. Obviously, Rala, who was temporarily promoted to country level for unknown reasons, had lost her mind. He must find a way to wake her up. The power of the flame gradually weakened. Chen Rui's mind moved. He activated the stealth skill and left the area silently. The stealth skill was very magical, and Rala was in a state of confusion at this time. Even with the SS spirit power, without Rain Fairy locking the target, it was impossible to detect Chen Rui's location. The fairy dragon, who had lost the target, did not attack again. Instead, she continued to stare blankly in the air. The elemental power flying around her was still chaotic. Should I use polar transformation to fight with Rala to wake her up? With the strength of polar transformation, it should not be difficult to suppress Rala, but Rala's spirit power at the moment had obviously exceeded the limit that a demon overlord could bear. If she forcibly used power to control, it was likely that her spirit power would suffer an unbearable backfire. If it was light, she would be seriously injured. If it was heavy, her life would be in danger. Only by relying on her own will to suppress it was the safest way. While Chen Rui was hesitating, he suddenly sensed a faint fluctuation coming from a distance. This fluctuation was a bit familiar. He glanced in that direction. That position seemed to be where the fountain of resurrection in the Rainbow Valley was. Chen Rui suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He finally remembered what the fluctuation was. The silver box. Chapter 832. The buildings around the Fountain of Resurrection had disappeared. The originally calm spring water was rising into the sky, forming a water column that wrapped a oblate square silver box. The lock of the box was loosened. It opened a crack, revealing an indescribable fluctuation. The silver box was the most mysterious thing in Chen Rui's knowledge. Even in the eyes of the pseudo-god powerhouses, the silver box was the hottest existence. Among the two pseudo-god powerhouses of the demon realm that Chen Rui knew, Satan let his disciple Tiffany enter the fourth floor of the library and turned her into a key, in order to open a mysterious place with a silver box. Charlie also coveted the silver box, so he did not hesitate to cast a long line to catch a big fish. He gave Chunrei the badges of Evil Eye and Summon Clone. There was more than one silver box. It was 1/7 or 1/2 of a complete part. This was very puzzling. There were currently 2 known silver boxes. From the half of Charlie's inadvertent leak, Chunrei speculated that there might also be a silver box in the Temple of the Holy Mountain. However, the Light Elemental King once warned that those without the power of a pseudo-god should never set foot in the Temple of Light. This sentence was basically verified by the four-winged angel Zihan and the supreme angel Raphael's clone. Then, the silver box must be related to the path of the gods, or is it the key to becoming a god? Chunrei had obtained the silver box for a long time. It could be traced back to the time when he was looking for the poisoned dragon's treasure in the Silent Night wetland. At that time, he had not even reached the Demon Emperor level, but he had never studied it. Rala even refused to tell him about the secret of the silver box. She just said that he had to at least step into the national level before he could start studying the silver box. Chunrei knew that Rala did this not out of selfishness, but for his own good. However, the silver box had now moved, which was probably the cause of Rala's loss of control. In other words, to let Rala regain consciousness, he must close the silver box. Chunrei moved stealthily towards the silver box. As soon as he got close, the originally weak fluctuations instantly became stronger. Chunrei felt as if his mind was being shaken, and there was only one thing left in his mind: destruction. It was not the first time that Chunrei had a similar feeling. When he first opened the silver box in the Silent Night wetland, he had experienced such an illusion. At that time, some kind of power even entered his body, fused with the inner demon, and produced the mortal enemy, Shura. Perhaps it was because of the fountain of resurrection, the strange power that caused his life force to drain did not appear. However, the annihilation became clearer and clearer. In Chunrei's soul perception, the annihilation was magnified infinitely, as if it was going to turn his body and soul into nothingness. This kind of destruction wasn't something that could be replaced by simple laws. Rather, it was a feeling similar to origin. Under this kind of origin, stealth skills had nowhere to hide. Chunrei only glanced at it and knew that he couldn't resist it, so he did not hesitate to use his strongest power, polar transformation. The bright starlight collided with the power of destruction, but it only lasted for a moment before collapsing. Chunrei had just completed the transformation of polar transformation at this time, and he immediately felt a terrible crisis. The appearance of stars appeared around his body, and the blue star kingdom was displayed. At the same time, a pair of giant wings covered in front of him. However, the star wing protection that could block the attack of the Peak Kingdom still couldn't stop the wave of destruction. Large cracks quickly appeared on the star wing, and even the image of the Blue Star Kingdom in nothingness began to collapse. Chunrei couldn't help but be shocked. With a bang, the star wing that had never really been damaged shattered, and the planets of the Blue Star Kingdom burst and disintegrated one after another. At this time, a large shield blocked in front of Chunrei in time. It was one of the 7 artifacts, the Demon Shield. As soon as the Demon Shield appeared, the aura of destruction seemed to be attracted by something and quickly gathered. Chunrei only felt the pressure increase, and his whole body couldn't move. He could only instinctively raise the Demon Shield to defend, like a bow that was pulled to its limit, and could break at any time. Blue Pole Transformation, Blue Star Domain, and the strongest defensive shield had exhausted Chunrei's strongest trump card, but he still couldn't resist it. The silver box actually had such a terrifying power, and he only opened a crack. It was different from when he opened the silver box and lost his vitality. Now, his strength should have reached a certain level and triggered the true power of the silver box. Perhaps, it was just a trace of the true power, but it was already unbearable. The origin of destruction. Chunrei had a flash of inspiration, and a trace of blood suddenly appeared in his eyes. He had already recalled Shura's doppelganger from the surface world. As soon as Shura's doppelganger merged with his body, Chunrui's pupils suddenly enlarged, and he suddenly felt as if he was in the scene of countless stars being annihilated. The strange thing was that he didn't feel any danger anymore, as if he was a part of the destruction. Chunrui felt his soul tremble violently, not because of fear or crisis, but because it was synchronized with some kind of rhythm of destruction. This wonderful feeling also appeared in the illusion after he fainted in the death battle with Terrace. However, it was not as clear as now, nor was it as now, as if he had grasped it in his hands. The birth of life was the process of pursuing completion. Completion meant the birth of a new life. In other words, destruction was also a part of birth, an innate part. Life and death, death and life. Destruction, creation, birth, death. Chunrui seemed to understand something, and suddenly made a surprising decision. He put away the demon shield and let the terrible wave of destruction envelop him. The star armor on his body couldn't resist the terrible power of destruction and shattered inch by inch. Before it fell to the ground, it turned into particles and dissipated. Even the mystic jade armor and other equipment on Chunrui were also disintegrated and annihilated. Chunrui's body was full of terrible wounds, and his real body became blurred. Just as he was about to turn into nothingness and be annihilated, he suddenly flashed and became clear again. Not only his body, but also the nearby star phantoms. Logically speaking, after the collapse of the polar star transformation, the blue star kingdom, containing the mystery of the kingdom, should not be able to be used, or it should be reduced to an ordinary star territory. However, the blue star kingdom not only did not disappear, but also became unprecedentedly bright and clear. Chunrui clearly felt that the huge power of faith surged out uncontrollably and integrated into the blue star kingdom. Gradually, the orbit of the planet faintly gained a kind of charm that had not been there before. Chunrui's soul merged with that charm, and entered a mysterious feeling. This is the law. It is not the original star law of the blue star kingdom, but the law that contains a trace of the power of the origin of destruction. Chunrui clearly felt the powerful power of this law. However, the current law was still in its initial embryonic form and needed a lot of nutrients to strengthen and stabilize. This was thanks to his understanding and gains in the Star Tower, which laid a solid foundation for the formation of this law. As long as the basic power was strengthened step by step and reached the quantity requirement, it could produce a quality change without any obstacles and breed the real law, breaking through the current realm in one fell swoop. At that time, this natural advancement would be the easiest time for him to advance. The scene of the destruction of the stars gradually dimmed and finally converged into the deep black pupils. The blue star kingdom also disappeared. Chunrui withdrew from that mysterious realm and found himself in front of the fountain of resurrection. The fountain of resurrection that turned into a water column had returned to its normal state. The strange silver box also closed its lid and lay quietly in the fountain as if nothing had happened. Chunrui's eyes lit up. Chunrui slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. What happened just now was not an illusion. Although it was only a moment in reality from resisting to understanding, he could clearly feel the existence of the embryonic law in his body. This time, he was blessed and used Shura to understand the precious law, which was indeed a huge gain. Compared with this gain, the pain all over his body was nothing. However, what Chunrui was most concerned about now was not these, but Rala's condition. There was a strong magic fluctuation from behind. Chunrui looked back. It turned out that the fairy dragon had been attracted by the movement here and appeared not far behind. The closing of the silver box didn't seem to wake Rala up immediately. She still exuded a strong hostility. After the baptism of the silver box, Chunrui's soul power at the moment had greatly increased again. Combined with the power of evil pupil and deep analysis, he saw some abnormalities around Rala. Gorgeous colors. A total of 6 colors: black, white, blue, green, red, and yellow. They should correspond to the 6 elements respectively. The 6 colors were mottled and looked chaotic. Among them, white and blue were very weak, while the other 4 colors were much thicker. Perhaps this imbalance was the source of the chaos. Chinrei's heart moved. Without waiting for Rala to make a move, 2 lights appeared in his hands, one white and one blue. As soon as the 2-colored light appeared, it immediately attracted Rala's attention. She didn't seem to move, but the white light and blue light in Chinrei's hands flew over automatically. These 2 lights were the power of the wind source and the power of the light source. After flying close to Rala, among the elements around her, the blue and white colors representing the wind element and light element began to brighten. When the power of the wind source and the power of the light source disappeared into Rala's body, the colors of blue and white had reached the same level as the other 4 colors. The 6 intertwined colors finally stagnated. The fairy dragon's purple pupils, which were initially a little lost, became a little more crystal clear. The manic and chaotic elements in the air gradually became gentle. In the analytical eyes, Rala's strength returned to S++. As the colorful light shone, the fairy dragon with butterfly wings disappeared and returned to her human form. Rala looked a little embarrassed. Her hair was messy, her clothes were ragged, and her glasses were broken without a trace. Only the frame was left. The fairy Miss Long appeared in front of Chinrei in a flash. Looking at the scars all over his body, she recalled the memory of her losing control. Her eyes suddenly turned red. Her lips moved again and again as if she wanted to say a lot of words, but she only converged into 2 words in the end. "Does it hurt?" Chinrei smiled and shook his head. "It doesn't hurt." As soon as he said the 2 words, the fairy Miss Long had already jumped into his arms and hugged him tightly. Chapter 833. Rainbow Valley. A white light appeared in Rala's hand. It was the first time that Chinrei had seen Rala use light healing, which naturally had something to do with the source power of light. They were both healing spells, but the water element was obviously inferior to the light element. Not only could the light element heal the surface wounds, but it could also stimulate the body's self-healing ability to speed up the recovery. It could also disperse some negative elements within a limited range. Of course, magic healing, in a sense, was actually using the body's potential to promote healing, so there were considerable restrictions on its use. If it was repeatedly used in a short period of time, the effect would decline, and it would cause hidden injuries because of overdrawing the body's skills. The body's physique and self-healing ability were the real cure. Magic was more auxiliary or first aid. This was actually the relationship between exercise, injections, and medicine. With the body of glorious light, self-healing physique, and light healing, the originally horrifying wound healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. "All right, Rala?" Chinrei felt that Rala's power was still very unstable. "What happened?" Rala withdrew her magic and looked very depressed. She lowered her head and said, "I'm sorry. This is not like my Rala." Chinrei took her into his arms. "Don't worry, no matter what it is, I will face it with you." Fairy Miss Long felt the warmth of the man's embrace and nodded gently. It turned out that Rala began to close the Rainbow Valley to cultivate after Chinrei went to the surface world last time. At that time, she already had 4 kinds of elemental source power, namely earth, water, fire, and dark. In theory, with each additional elemental source power, the success rate of the 6 elemental kingdom would increase by 1 point. However, the strength of the elemental source power far exceeded expectations, especially the variety of source powers. The previous kind of earth source power was fine. The character of the earth element was originally mellow and stable, but with the addition of water, fire, and dark source powers, it gradually became difficult to control. Objectively speaking, the speed at which Rala absorbed the 4 kinds of source powers was still too rash. In fact, this had a lot to do with Chinrei. When Chinrei first met Rala, she was still a middle-level fighter who could not withstand a single blow. In just a few years, she had grown to the point where she could stand shoulder to shoulder with her, and was even showing signs of surpassing her. Fairy Miss Long was a little competitive, but that was not the main reason. The real reason was that in the Battle of Warlock Fortress, Chinrei bid farewell to her and almost died in the hands of Raisin. This scene greatly stimulated Rala. She was determined to reach the state level as soon as possible, and not let this kind of thing happen again. Not only that, she also wanted to defeat Raisin in the martial arts tournament 2 years later. After absorbing the 4 source powers, Rala instinctively felt that something was wrong, but she was confident that she could resolve it with the fairy dragon's magic body talent, so she didn't say anything. As time went by, the power of the elements became more and more difficult to control, and the danger became higher and higher. Even the fairy dragon's natural magic body couldn't reconcile, so she was forced to frequently retreat to try to find a solution. In this closed-door training, Rala intended to get things done once and for all by taking the risk to condense the most important rudimentary form of the kingdom. As long as this skeleton was successful, the power of the elements would also be absorbed and controlled, fundamentally resolving the previous troubles. However, the difficulty of the 6 elemental kingdom was too great. Although Zola was already mentally prepared, the difficulties he encountered in practice were far beyond his imagination. In particular, the 4 elements with source power were too strong, and it was impossible to balance them with the other 2. Under the terrifying impact of the elemental backlash, Zola lost consciousness for a time. Fortunately, the fairy dragon's magic body talent was very strong, so this kind of loss of consciousness was phased. Sometimes she was awake, sometimes she was confused. When she was awake, Rala kept trying to control the elements, but unfortunately, she failed every time. During the chaos, Rala would unconsciously destroy everywhere, looking for a way to vent her power. The silver box was opened by her unconsciously. Due to the silver box's strange power, Rala's spirit power had risen to the kingdom level. Not only the rudiment of the rule, but even the entire rule was faintly taking shape. But this was not a good thing. On the contrary, it would become the most fatal threat. This was because this powerful precept was not something that Zola had comprehended on his own. Instead, it was caused by the silver box. Thus, the changes and mysteries within it were not comprehended at all. This meant that once the precept was formed, Zola was very likely to be devoured by the enormous power that he could not control and turn into ashes. The most terrible thing was that the rule was about to be condensed and could not be eliminated. In other words, this step was irreversible, and Rala had to face it. With the danger of the 6-element kingdom plus this unexpected factor, Rala was almost equivalent to receiving a death notice. Why is this happening? Chenrui, who knew the truth, felt his heart tighten instantly, almost losing the ability to beat. He worked hard to collect the 6 elemental source powers just to reduce the risk of Rala advancing to the kingdom, but he didn't expect it to develop into this situation. Rala shook his head. One must pay a price in the pursuit of power. Along the way, I've seen the fall of countless powerhouses to get to where I am today. In fact, from the moment I chose this path, I've already been aware of it. Besides, this may not be a death of certain death. Now that the 6 elemental source powers have been gathered, the power of the elements has also been balanced. As long as I can control the rule, I can directly succeed in the kingdom transformation. Chenrui knew that this was a comforting remark. It was easier said than done to control the rule, especially such a powerful 6-element rule. How confident are you? Rala raised 2 fingers, thought about it, and put away 1 finger. 10%? Chenrui's heart sank. He never thought that his beloved Rala would suddenly be so close to death. Chenrui, I am in your life, you are an indispensable part of my life. This was the farewell that Chenrui had said to her last time at the Warlock Fortress. Chenrui knew what she was going to say and shook his head. We are far from giving up hope. Oh. Rala didn't explain. In fact, she just raised a finger, which meant 1/1000. For a super powerhouse, whether it is equipment or potions, they can no longer play a big role, unless it is a divine artifact. Chenrui pondered. In any case, we can't let go of any auxiliary measures that increase the probability of success. Watching Chenrui take out piece of equipment, carefully select and calculate, and help her put it on, Rala's eyes were a little hazy. She suddenly felt very satisfied. Some people lived for tens of thousands of years and were always alone. Some people, even if they only lived for a few years, were not lonely. She couldn't remember how she had lived through the past tens of thousands of years, but she clearly remembered every little detail of the past few years. Those unprecedented happiness, and even the sadness and anger, all of them had his shadow in every one of them. Suddenly, a strange power came. Rala focused her eyes and saw that it was a ball of light. She cried out involuntarily. Symbiotic contract! Shinrei gently stroked her purple hair. It's a part of life. It's not something that you can just talk about. Rala looked at him blankly, as if she didn't see the light of the contract, but tears were rolling in her eyes. You can't hide it from me. Shinrei pinched her nose. This should be the biggest test of your life. Dragon life. I said that no matter what it is, we will face it together. Rala didn't pretend to be in a daze anymore. She just shook her head desperately, and as she shook, tears fell. At this moment, the power fluctuations on Rala's body involuntarily rippled, and the surrounding elemental aura gradually became stronger. Rala! Quickly accept the contract. Shinrei was shocked and grabbed her shoulder. Your laws have already begun to condense. Do you remember the star sealing I told you about? You can transfer a certain amount of power through the contract. At that time, you said that you don't need to borrow power that doesn't belong to you, but it's different now. The more help you have, the more chances of success, even if it's only 1 in 10,000. You mean the star generals, star attendants, and star apostles in the Grand Master's inheritance that you mentioned last time? Rala bit her lip. I want a star general, can I? Shinrei suddenly remembered that when he mentioned the star sealing last time, Rala, Athena, Isabella, Kia and Xiao were all present. The number of star sealing was 1 star general, 2 star attendants, and 3 star apostles. In the Tower of Glory in the Dead Sea, Shinrei once gave the star attendant title to Dodo. After Shinrei removed all the master-servant contracts in the Warlock Fortress, Dodo's star attendant title disappeared after losing the link, so there were still 6 star positions. The bonus of Star General's star position was Strength S-. Special characteristic, Army Breaker. Increased damage and doubled destructive power. The bonus of Star Attendant's star position was Spirit A+. Special characteristic, Condensed Thought. Increased magic casting speed and spirit recovery. The bonus of Star Apostle's star position was Speed A. Special characteristic, Thunder Rush. Increased movement speed and attack speed. Shinrei's original intention was that the Star General was a strength-type star position, which was most suitable for Athena or Jia. The spirit bonus would be given to Rala and Kia. The speed bonus would be given to Isabella, followed by Athena and Jia. He initially thought that there were 6 places and 5 girls should be more than enough. He shouldn't have said, free choice. But everyone chose the Star General, and no one was willing to give way. Shinrei was a little confused at that time. Later he realized that there was only 1 Star General, and it was an S bonus. It was obviously the leader of all the stars, so the girls were naturally linked to the status of the Crystal Palace and refused to give in to each other. In order to avoid conflicts in the harem, the matter of the star position was temporarily set aside and left for the joint development at the next meeting of the Crystal Palace. Even now, at this moment, Rala still didn't forget to take the lead. Shinrei couldn't help but wipe his sweat. Don't be stubborn. The star attendant is the one who boosts spirit, and it can also increase spirit recovery. It's what you need right now. Alright then, change the symbiotic contract to an ordinary equality contract. So this was the true meaning of Miss Long's words. Shinrei looked deeply at Rala. At this moment, he clearly saw the determination and stubbornness in her beautiful purple eyes. If he didn't change the contract, she definitely wouldn't want this star position, even if it was the moment of life and death when the rules exploded. Rala, I was wrong. We don't need this kind of contract between us. Shinrei kissed her forehead. From the moment we promised to be together forever, we already made a contract that will never change in life or death. Rala didn't say anything more. She kissed his face and accepted the power of changing it to an ordinary equality contract. At this time, the concentration of elements had reached an extremely shocking level. Chenrui felt terrible pressure. Knowing that time was tight, he immediately entered the star-sealing platform with his mind. The star-sealing platform was a large open space. In front of it was a high platform. Behind it were faith creatures such as snow dowlet, phantom flower, and wishing grass, which could produce bonus to the star position. Chenrui activated the star-sealing platform and received a prompt. After the star position is conferred, an additional faith crystal will be consumed every day. It will take 3 days to cancel the original star position, and a new star position can only be conferred after a month. Do you want to spend 1,500 faith crystals to confer the star attendant star position to Rala and the equality link? Chenrui confirmed the conferment, and felt a strange connection in his spirit. In the spiritual link, Rala's name had an additional blue title of Star Attendant. Note: Spirit bonus A+, characteristic, mind condensation. Snow dowlet bonus 30% spirit power, phantom flower bonus 20% speed, consumes 1 faith crystal per day. Not only Rala, but Chenrui's own spirit power also seemed to have increased a lot. It seemed that this star position bonus was two-sided. When Chenrui exited the super system, Rala's figure had already moved to a distance. Her breast skyrocketed to a quite amazing height, and the elemental power lingering around her body materialized again, turning into 6 colors. This time, the originally dim white and blue had been consistent with the other 4 colors. The 6 source powers had reached a balanced height, which also meant an increase in danger. In the analytical eyes, Rala's spirit power once again climbed to SS-. The bonus of the star-sealing platform was not enough to reach this level. The rule had begun. Rala's body shook and revealed the true body of the fairy dragon. This time, she was in a sober state, which was completely different from the previous chaos. As the 2 butterfly wings flapped, the 6-colored light turned into a faint rainbow, wrapping her body. In the rainbow, rune-like symbols of various colors could be vaguely seen. They were constantly intertwining and disappearing. A large number of cracks began to appear on the nearby solid barrier ground. With Rala as the center, the cracks quickly spread around. Chenrui quickly activated the strongest ancient rune's protection to stabilize the barrier. Every time those symbols flashed a cycle, the depth of the rainbow deepened. Half an hour later, the rainbow's light illuminated the entire crystal valley. Cold, heavy, gentle, hot, and other feelings alternated. In the analytical eyes, Rala's spirit power was raised to SS, and her other qualities had also reached SS-. It was completely the strength of a national level. However, Chenrui's expression became more and more nervous because he could clearly feel that Rala's vitality was rapidly decreasing. The body of the fairy dragon in the rainbow became blurred. Once the maximum load was exceeded, her body and soul would be destroyed by this terrifying elemental power. You must hold on! Chenrui clenched his fists. His nails had deeply pierced into his flesh, but he didn't seem to feel it. He just stared at the increasingly dim figure in the dazzling rainbow. At this moment, he suddenly felt a strange power transmitted from his body to the rainbow. This power was very familiar. It was the faith power. The faith power was continuously injected into the rainbow. There was a golden light in the rainbow, then the fairy dragon's body turned into particles and scattered. Chenrui was shocked, then he reacted immediately. No! The data of analytical eyes is still there. And the spiritual link with Rala has not disappeared. Chapter 834. Rala's body, which seemed to be scattered, did not collapse. Instead, it scattered into countless rays of light and merged into the rainbow. Those changing symbols gradually had a special sense of rhythm. The rainbow's light became more and more dazzling. The aura of slight warmth, heat, and cold were all mixed together. The rainbow's colors were also disappearing and merging into a kind of golden color. It was the color produced when the faith power was input. The golden light gradually changed from dazzling to soft. Chinray felt that Rala's vitality was unprecedentedly strong, and the power of the elements had completely stabilized. Knowing that she had passed the difficulty, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. Suddenly, Chinray felt that everything around him had stopped, just like the pause of the time rule. However, this was not the pause of time, but another more mysterious stillness. At this time, Rala's voice sounded. "Where is this place, Chinray? Where are you?" This voice did not come from the golden figure. Chinray was feeling strange, and he suddenly woke up. Super system. Almost without thinking, Chinray entered the super system immediately. In the super system, he was the absolute controller, and he immediately noticed that there was one more person in the Galaxy Divinity Temple. To be precise, it was on the star-sealing platform. Rala. Seeing Chinray appearing in front of her, Rala was finally relieved. This unknown place had an indescribable aura. It was ethereal and illusory like an ancient god, which made her feel awe involuntarily. Rala? It was not that Chinray doubted his vision, but the fact that Rala entered the super system was too incredible. It surprised him more than the automatic output of faith power previously. The answer was soon revealed. The fairy Miss Long jumped onto him. This was the secret, lowly jump, taught by Alice to teacher Rala. For Rala it was Big Sister Jump. Feeling the familiar aura, Chinray hugged the fairy Miss Long's attractive body tightly. The scene of Rala's body collapsing in the rainbow almost made his mind collapse. Fortunately, he did not lose her. Rala hugged him even tighter. No matter where it was, they were not afraid of anything when they were together. After a long time, the two overlapping figures separated a little. Rala looked at Chinray in amazement. "You seem a little different. You are like a god that needs to be looked up to and worshipped. Why do I have this strange feeling?" "God?" Chinray didn't react for a while. He only heard Rala looking at the star-sealing platform curiously. "Where is this?" "You can understand it as the inheritance from the Grand Master, nation." Chinray shrugged. "Anyway, the excuse of Grand Master has been used every time. As for time travel and the super system, I'll just keep it in my heart. Even the most intimate husband and wife also have their own private space and little secrets." "Inheritance nation!" Zola looked surprised. "Just now, the power generated by the elemental rule was too strong. When my will was about to collapse, a huge and pure power came from your body and merged with my soul. Especially your spiritual power, it was so strong that it was unbelievably strong. It completely controlled the entire rule without any detail. Is this the inherited power of a Grand Master? To be precise, it's the faith power of this nation." "Faith power!" Rala was stunned. "No wonder it feels so special, as if it has a fatal attraction. However, faith can only be sensed at the later stage of the nation level and can only be mastered at the demigod level. Why? Did I become a believer of the Grand Master?" Fairy Miss Long seemed to think of something again and asked suspiciously. "That Grand Master, will he resurrect or devour your soul?" "I can answer you with certainty that he won't." Chinray smiled and shook his head. "That's good." Rala put down a big stone in her heart and said with joy, "This faith power is continuously circulating. It seems to be permanent. Faith is the key to demigod. If this is the case, it should be much easier for me to break through to the demigod level in the future." "Permanent possession?" Chinray thought for a while. It's true that the output of faith power saved Rala just now. This kind of mutation must be related to the star sealing. However, why didn't this happen when Dodo was sealed? He suddenly had an idea. If Rala can enter the super system, does this mean that other people can also come in? Does this mean that I can build a mobile house and bring my family around at any time? Once this inspiration was born, it was difficult to extinguish. While he was fantasizing, there was more information in his consciousness. It was from the star-sealing platform. He saw a tree-shaped legend on the star-sealing platform. At the top was his name, Blue Pole Star Emperor Chinray. There were a few branches below, but most of them were empty. There was only a row of text flashing with dark blue light. True Star Serve Rala. Basic Spirit Power increased by 30%. Characteristic: True Condensing Thought. Magic Casting Speed doubled, Spirit Power Recovery doubled, Element Control doubled. True Star Serve Dash? True Condensing Thought? The original Star Serve's characteristic was additional Spirit Power of A+. Magic Casting Speed increased and Spirit Power Recovery accelerated. The attributes of this True Star Serve are much stronger, but how is True generated? Could it be related to nationalization? If I haven't reached a certain level of strength, I only have simple attribute bonuses without the power of the real star position? When Chinrui's mind fell on the connection line between the Blue Pole Star Emperor and the True Star Serve Dash, a prompt came. 1. Emperor's Prestige, Star Position Deterrence. Eliminate all violations of will. Cancelable. 2. Piety, Faith Solidification, can't change faith at will. Cancelable. 3. Faith Link, can bestow faith and absorb faith feedback. Ratio Adjustable, Faith Link, should be a long-term relationship of investment and return. The star position holder could get the support of the faith power of the super system, such as the golden light just now. Similarly, faith and power would also be returned. It was equivalent to a cycle or a pyramid structure. The highest bestowal ratio was 20 degrees, and the lowest feedback ratio was 100 degrees. Although it was still unclear how much this degree was, it was certain that it was a profitable business. As the emperor at the top of the pyramid, he would definitely benefit the most. No wonder when the stars were sealed, not only the star position holder, but also Chinrui, the Polaris Emperor, was strengthened to a certain extent. These three should be the relationship and authority between the Blue Pole Star Emperor and the True Star Serve. In fact, the authority of the Polaris Emperor was more than that. However, Chinrui was now the most basic Blue Pole Star Emperor. When he broke through to the next level, he should have new authority. Ha! Rala's surprised voice came. The feeling of worship is gone? The faith power in my body seems to have increased a lot? Of course, this was Chinrui's doing. He cancelled Emperor's Prestige and Piety. For Rala, these were unnecessary. He also increased the bestowal ratio of the faith link to the maximum. You can't see the name there? You mean that high platform? Rala asked curiously. What's the name? Chinrui knew that it should be a problem of authority. Only he could see it. He shook his head and said, It's nothing. I'll take you out for a walk. This place is called the Star Sealing Platform. It's part of the entire Galaxy Divinity Temple. The strange thing was that Rala couldn't leave the range of the Star Sealing Platform. While Chinrui was puzzled, Rala's body became thin and quickly disappeared from the Star Sealing Platform. Rala! Chinrui was shocked and quickly exited the super system. The previous stillness had returned to normal. Although he had experienced more than 10 minutes on the Star Sealing Platform, it was only an instant in reality. It turned out that it was Rala's soul that entered the Star Sealing Platform just now, not her body. Chinrui suddenly felt a sense of pity. It seemed that the mobile house assumption was temporarily unsuccessful. In front, the golden light converged into the condensed human figure. It was Rala. Fairy Miss Long's momentum was very ordinary. There was no special power, but in Chinrui's evil pupil, there was an unfathomable sense of danger. Race, Dragons, Fairy Dragon, Comprehensive Strength Assessment, SS Physique, SS-Strength, SS-Spirit, SS Speed, SS-. Analysis, Magic Physique, Elemental Talent, Spell Mastery, Magic Defense Suppression. Danger Level, Extremely Dangerous. Chinrui's spirit was lifted. Sure enough, this time, it's the real national level. Also, it has the ability to break magic defense. The process of Rala's advancement further revealed the mystery of the Star Sealing Platform. As long as she reached the level where she could sense faith, she could be granted the real star position and receive the protection of part of the super system's faith power. For Paglio and Dodo, who were already close to the national level, It was definitely the greatest benefit. Although he didn't know if the star position would cause restrictions on training, according to Rala, with the faith power, it would be much less difficult to break through to demigod in the future. Fairy Miss Long looked at her hands in disbelief. She felt the new huge power, and her eyes flashed with surprise. Chen-Rui! Just hearing the excited voice of Fairy Miss Long, Chen-Rui felt dizzy, and he was pushed to the ground. Bang! The force was a bit too much. Someone's back hit the ground heavily, and there was a shallow human-shaped pit. It hurts. Chen-Rui almost rolled his eyes. This is the power of SS-. The reason was very simple. Rala had just advanced to the national level, and she relied on the help of faith power. She couldn't use her own power freely for a while. Rala was also shocked. She didn't dare to move for a while. She was maintaining an ambiguous posture, but her body suddenly trembled slightly. She fell softly on him, and her face suddenly blushed. Hee, that's a normal man's natural reaction. A vulgar laugh came from below, and one of his hands was already unbuttoning the back of Fairy Miss Long's skirt. Oh right, you still can't control your power. I might as well be a good person to the end. I'll use the Grand Master's secret dual training technique to help you stabilize it. Rala felt the hardness of the object pressing against her, and her private parts couldn't help but be aroused. She also reached out to take off his clothes. Hiss! Fairy Miss Long couldn't control her power again. Her clothes were actually torn, and a few bloody marks were left on someone's chest. Due to her high emotions, a bit of elemental power leaked out accidentally. Bzzzt bzzzt. Sparks flashed, and someone's hair instantly stood up. Wait a minute. Chen-Rui realized that he seemed to have made a wrong decision at the wrong time. What? Wait. Rala! Bzzzt, help! Chapter 835. How heroic was the sex in the Rainbow Valley? Whether it was a man or a woman who dominated the battlefield, whether the man left by holding the wall or crawling away, and other details could no longer be investigated. What was certain was that the Fairy Miss Long successfully advanced to the national level, but the order of advancement was a bit different. An ordinary national-level powerhouse would first comprehend the law and then build the kingdom. However, because of the silver box, the Fairy Miss Long skipped the first step and directly built the kingdom. Next, she must meditate and thoroughly master the power of the law. Otherwise, she would not be able to exert the true power of the six-element kingdom. Therefore, the Fairy Miss Long's next job was still to train behind closed doors. This trip to the Rainbow Valley could be described as thrilling. Not only was Rala almost annihilated by the elemental law, but Chen-Rui also almost died when facing the silver box previously. Fortunately, Rala survived the crisis under the magical effect of the star sealing, and Chen-Rui also used Shura's clone to comprehend the prototype of the law of destruction. He only needed to further consolidate the foundation and refine star power, then he could smoothly break through to the next rank. Rala's advancement to the national level made Chen-Rui have a correct understanding of the star sealing that he had neglected a little. The star position was not just a simple bonus. There might be more unexpected mysteries. In addition to Rala's true star servant, there were still 5 places for the star sealing, 1 star general, 1 star servant, and 3 star apprentices. Chen-Rui thought for a while. The star apprentice with the acceleration attribute was given to Isabella, Lomont, and Athena. The star servant with spirit enhancement was given to Dodo, and the star general spot was given to Paglio. Although Dodo was not a magic trainer, his will and spirit power were his weaknesses. The spirit enhancement of the star servant could somewhat make up for some shortcomings. The most important thing was that the slime was already at the S++ level, which was quite close to the national level. With the star position, the risk and difficulty of breaking through to the national level would be greatly reduced. Rala was the best example. Isabella and Lomont were the Belphegor royal family with speed talent. The rolling thunder, that accelerated movement and attack was exactly what they liked. Athena was the lord of the dark moon, and her strength was about to break through to the demon emperor now. Getting a demon emperor level speed bonus was naturally beneficial to her understanding of the demon emperor level strength. As for Kia, she was not keen on training, and Jia previously entered the demon overlord by relying on external forces. What she needed most now was to stabilize her foundation. In addition, she was busy with state affairs, so there was no spot for the astrology. Although Dodo was close to the national level, he was a lazy guy after all. Compared with the slime, Master Poison Dragon, who was also at the S++ level, had a higher chance of advancing to the national level. Especially after witnessing Chunrei's gorgeous transformation in the alchemy contest and killing the dragon lich, Eucalius, who was killed by the national level. Paglio didn't seem to be affected on the surface, but he was actually quite stimulated. He watched Chunrei grow up step by step. His human partner was initially a powerless weakling, but now he was far above him. In fact, Paglio had been training hard in secret. He was determined to succeed in nationalization as soon as possible and participate in the fighting contest tomorrow. It was best to defeat the arrogant Raisin in one fell swoop and let the name of Master Poison Dragon resound throughout the demon realm. Chunrei understood the Poison Dragon's mind, so he gave the highest star general to Paglio. Having said that, the highest position that the harem members coveted was a good way to resolve the conflict to Paglio. However, when Madame Ant suddenly realized and said, "It turns out that you like men the most," when the little loli wanted to see the world in chaos and asked, "How do two men have sex?" when the little maid added with a bitter face, "I should have thought of it." Chunrei could only cover his face and run away in tears. The current situation of the demon realm had basically stabilized. The remaining forces of the Bloodfall were basically annihilated. The three empires under the Armistice Agreement were at peace. There were more and more trade between them. The academy established by the Fallen Angel Empire was only announced because various preparatory work was not complete. The official first round of enrollment had not been launched yet. Compared with the academy, the Empire Bank was bustling. Although there was magic equipment like storage devices in this world, only a few people had them after all. The storage devices' space was very limited, and coins were something that occupied a lot of space. Now, one only needed to apply for a magic crystal card to easily access any amount of funds in various cities. This was equivalent to an infinitely large coin storage device. Since the bank was directly under the Empire, there was no risk of fraud. Moreover, there was interest when it was deposited in the bank. For a time, the bank's business was extremely hot. Everyone was proud of having a magic crystal card. The Bloody Empire and the Shadow Empire naturally would not ignore the movement of the Fallen Angel Empire. The Academy was fine as they could just copy it, but the two empires did not dare to touch the bank. Free deposit and withdraw money, and still give interest for free? Isn't this a loss-making business? According to the provisions of the Armistice Agreement, the Fallen Angel Empire must share the rules of new things with the Shadow Empire and the Bloody Empire, so the envoys sent by the two empires quickly brought back the mystery of the bank. After understanding the principles of making money such as the deposit and loan interest difference, handling fees, and card application fees, the two empires did not hesitate to establish their own empire bank. The opening of this wealth path made the capital of the two empires more robust. Seeing the details of income and expenditure and long-term income forecast handed over by the finance minister, even Raisin showed a smile of approval. Unfortunately, he didn't know that Chunrei was also smiling. Shura's mission in the human world progressed smoothly. In order to compete for the position of Archbishop, Billy obeyed him. The mysterious church actually played the role of the messenger of justice. They constantly dug out the vermin of the Church of Light, carried out bloody punishment, and exposed their misdeeds. The Church of Light could cover it up for a while, but it couldn't cover it up for a long time. The worst part was that those who were exposed were indeed scum. Some of the evil deeds they had committed were enough to make people's hair stand on end. The mysterious church's means were quite brilliant. They severely attacked the evildoers, but they did not hurt the innocent at all. This way, they gained the trust and support of the people. The prestige of the Church of Light was greatly reduced, and the faith was also declining sharply. The effect of this method was very significant. It made Bilia, who had just been promoted to bishop, incredibly become the most popular archbishop candidate among the 7 bishops of the East District. The rest of the bishops were not willing to be outdone, and they imitated each other. Many churches were punished by justice at the same time. Including the 2 holy empires, some countries also took the opportunity to push things in the dark, further weakening the control of the Church of Light. The Holy Mountain of Light was extremely furious about this. However, as the people's morale was greatly reduced, they could only publicly rectify and clean up the Church's corruption and lawbreakers. They punished a group of typical people, and secretly sent out a large number of people to search for and deal with the masterminds behind these incidents. The Black Death apostles had always been secretive, but such a large-scale operation was still traceable. A few of their lairs were destroyed by the Knights of Light and the judges. Naturally, the Black Death apostles were not kind people. They launched a few ambushes and traps, and both sides suffered casualties for a while. The mysterious Church's actions were naturally not an act of true justice. They were only acting out of their own needs. He couldn't go back empty-handed. He thought about it, and decided to go to the Island of Storms first. The City of Stars had been upgraded to a Level 3 alchemy civilization city. Skywheel had contributed a lot. Although it had become a ruin, and he had plundered a lot of good things last time, it was once a Level 4 city after all. There must be many materials that could be used in the City of Stars. Chapter 836. Under the familiar control of the Sandmen, the Devil's Snare's ships sailed in the stormy sea with ease. Except that sometimes Chunrei needed to split the unavoidable hurricane, there were no obstacles along the way. Chunrei stood quietly on the deck, feeling the sea breeze. He was experiencing the wonderful realization brought by the power of nature between heaven and earth. This kind of realization was not present in the previous 2 times. Of course, it was due to the growth of Chunrei's strength, but it was mainly because there was no mission or urgent matter this time, so his mentality was particularly relaxed. A Zen master once said that a normal state of mind was the foundation of Tao enlightenment. The law was actually the mystery of evolving the natural power of the universe with oneself. Chunrei had currently condensed the prototype of the law. Under the calm mind state of mind, he was also facing this natural power, and the realization in his heart was very different from before. He had touched the true origin of destruction by chance, but it was just touching. The power of everything in the universe couldn't be grasped by imagination or illusion, but it needed real enlightenment. As an amateur of history and sinology, Chunrei clearly remembered that Chen Liang of the Southern Song dynasty once said, "Tao is in the world, what is not Tao? There are thousands of roads, but it depends on the situation." Tao was not illusory and untouchable. Not only did it exist in everything in the universe, but it also existed in life. Although this was the system of the magic world instead of the legendary Xianxia, the essence of power was the same. The so-called thousands of roads led to the same destination. The pursuit of Tao was not only power but also more things. In the process of thinking and realizing, Chunrei unknowingly entered a pure spiritual realm. He did not cast evil pupil or deep analysis, but the surrounding scene became a colorful special world in his eyes. Heaven and earth were a circular force field of the universe. There were countless stars everywhere, and he was one of them, rotating according to his own orbit. He didn't simply rotate according to the effect of the power, but in the process of this rotation, he constantly understood the mystery of the entire force field and gradually integrated it into himself. Gradually, he seemed to have grasped some of the veins, and the aura around him began to change bit by bit. A powerful hurricane appeared in front of the Devil's Snare ship. Under the surging sea, the ship swayed more and more. Chunrei, who was immersed in the spiritual world, still hadn't woken up. The Sandmen were not stupid. They did not disturb their master, and only tried their best to steer the boat, trying to avoid the dangerous wind zone. something strange happened. The hurricane in front of them seemed to be distorted by some kind of great power. It gradually shrank and then disappeared without a trace. Chenrui did not notice these changes as he was still immersed in his comprehension. After a long time, the boundless universe gradually faded away. Chenrui let out a long sigh. Just now, he must have entered a subtle state of epiphany by chance. Even if he wanted to enter it deliberately in the future, he wouldn't be able to. This time, he gained a lot from the epiphany. The embryonic form of the law had been further perfected and improved. If Chenrui wanted to force a breakthrough, it was very likely that he would advance directly, but he didn't intend to do so. In the cultivation of the Star Tower, he fully realized the importance of basic star power. Now that he had the necessary conditions for qualitative change, he only needed to further accumulate enough quantitative change, and when the conditions were right, he would naturally obtain more powerful power. From the perspective of a supra-nationalization was just the beginning. The more stable the foundation, the better. It would also be an important guarantee for the gradual improvement of the realm in the future. Not only that, but Chenrui also wanted to use his understanding of the destruction law to further understand the mystery of the time law. Now, he had realized that the time stop evolved by the Four Seasons domain was just a power slightly higher than the domain level. It was not a real law, but it could be said to be the embryonic form of a law. If he could succeed, then his strength would definitely be further improved. "We've arrived?" Chenrui realized that the Devil's Snare's ship had already arrived at the Island of Storms. He asked in surprise. The Sandman replied respectfully, "Captain, we've been docked for 2 hours." 2 hours? Chenrui was slightly surprised. He nodded, put away the Devil's Snare's ship and the Sandman, and walked towards the island. He was already quite familiar with the terrain of the Island of Storms, so he walked directly in the direction of the canyon where the Skywheel was located. Along the way, he did not encounter any harassment from the magical beasts. He did not even see a single thunderbird that usually hovered in the sky. Chenrui felt a little strange. He did not release any aura, so why did so many magical beasts seem to have hidden all of a sudden? Chenrui sped up his pace. A few hours later, he came to the basin where the titans and giants often appeared. It was still empty. He had a bad feeling about it. As he walked forward, some exaggerated traces began to appear on the ground. It seemed that a fierce battle had taken place. Judging from the traces, the Titans should have been involved in the battle. The battle did not take long, and it happened in the past few days. Chenrui's heart skipped a beat. He did not go directly to the canyon where the Skywheel was located, but he followed the traces of the battle all the way to the front of a cliff. Even if the Island of Storms is destroyed, you have only yourself to blame. Damn it! The wind elementals are not your captive combat tools. Besides, it was that damn dragon knight who hurt the wind elementals first. Seth became angrier. Speaking of death, you will kill the giants every time you train. What about this? The strong are respected. Naturally, whoever has the bigger fist has the final say. Myroskia's laughter was even more contemptuous. If you insist on not withdrawing from the war, then I don't mind demolishing your cloud palace after dealing with these giants. Seth was not afraid, nor did he intend to withdraw from the war. If you really dare to do that, the wind elementals will never stop fighting with Ryuzaku. So what? A look of disdain flashed in the golden dragon's pupils. It allowed the lightning in Seth's hand to surround it. With a flap of its wings, the lightning collapsed. Oceanus and Seth were shaken away by the powerful breath. The golden dragon was about to pursue, but its snake pupils suddenly shrank. It looked into the distance as if it had discovered some kind of terrifying breath. In the time for a few breaths of time, another figure had appeared here. This figure was wrapped in a dazzling armor, and the light it emitted seemed to eclipse the sun in the sky. Wherever it passed, the giant dragons would retreat in fear, and the griffins would tremble, almost losing the strength to flap their wings. Chenrui naturally cast the strongest transformation, Blue Polar Star transformation. His purpose was very clear, to help the Titans and wind elementals repel these dragons. His eyes suddenly stopped on the figure behind a dragon for a moment. A look of surprise flashed in his eyes, but his feet did not stop. He walked all the way to the Titan leader. Although they could not see his face clearly, the Titans could still sense the unique spiritual imprint of the ruler. The leader of the Titans, Oceanus, immediately knelt on one knee. "Great ruler, you have finally arrived." This action and address made Seth immediately understand the identity of the person. He couldn't help but be secretly shocked. This person turns out to be Richard, who negotiated with the 3 kings of light last time. He actually has such a powerful breath. He is definitely the strength of a super powerhouse. The light elemental king Delcus once said that the kingdomized powerhouse of the Church of Light, the 4-winged angel Isiril, was likely to fall in the hands of Richard. At that time, Seth and the fire elemental king didn't believe it, but now it seemed that it was true. "Your Highness Seth, we meet again." Shinrei nodded to the wind elemental king and looked at the golden dragon. The golden dragon was also looking at this uninvited guest, vigilantly judging from the breath exuded by the other party. He is definitely a powerful enemy. What surprised her the most was the way the giants addressed him. "The dragons have been training on the Island of Storms for many years, but I have never heard of these giants having a master. What kind of existence is this person?" Chapter 837. Gold Dragon Maraskia stared at Shinrei, who was slowly rising into the air opposite her. The star-like aura made her instinctively feel a sense of danger, and her golden dragon scales stood up. "Why haven't I seen you before? Who are you?" At this time, the dragons had stopped fighting under the command of the gold dragon. The Titans and the wind elementals had also returned to their leader. Oceanus immediately distributed energy blocks to the Titans to restore their strength and injuries. "You have heard it just now, the master of the Titans." Shinrei snorted coldly. "In the current situation, we are enemies. That's all you need to know. Do you think you can be the enemy of the entire Ryuzaku?" Maraskia sneered, secretly channeled the power of the kingdom, and quickly condensed it into her eyes. Maraskia was a gold dragon. The characteristics of the gold dragon were somewhat similar to that of the black dragon. They could greatly weaken magic damage, so the thunder and storm of the Titans and the wind magic of the wind elemental king were restrained by Maraskia's physique. However, compared to the black dragon, the gold dragon's magic immunity attribute was lower. Their physical strength was slightly better than the black dragon, but their offensive and defensive power were slightly inferior. Maraskia was one of the best among the gold dragons. Not only had she reached the nation level, but she also had a mutated talent, which was the soul obsidian technique. Generally speaking, gold dragons were not magic dragons. In addition to their physical strength, they only had dragon breath, which was an attack method. However, Maraskia was different. The soul obsidian technique she possessed made even the nation-level dragons who were stronger than her very afraid. Unlike physical attacks, the soul obsidian technique was a kind of soul attack. The principle was to shock the soul with the power of the law. If it was light, it could make the opponent dizzy and launch a fatal attack. If it was heavy, it could damage the enemy's soul. If the soul power was weak, it could even be life-threatening. This move was Maraskia's unique skill. In this kind of situation where she was caught off guard, she had complete confidence to defeat the enemy in one move. Shinrei had long been ready for a tough battle. The evil eye that was fused with deep analysis was always ready. From the external, deep analysis, he clearly saw the high-speed energy condensing in the eyes of the gold dragon. With a thought, he also quickly increased the power of the evil eye to the maximum. Almost at the same time, the golden light in Maraskia's snake eyes flourished, and Shinrei's pupils glowed with a dark purple light. The moment the two looked at each other, the surrounding dragons felt their souls tremor. Shinrei was slightly shocked, but then he was fine. The golden light in Maraskia's eyes dimmed instantly, and her pupils dilated and contracted at high speed. She swayed in the air as if she was drunk. Her huge body couldn't maintain balance and fell straight down like a meteorite. Shinrei's face. The golden dragon smashed a shallow pit in the ground and tried to stand up, but he fell down again. The dazzling soul pupil technique was a gifted pupil technique that could shock the soul, but what Shinrei had was the evil pupil taught by the pseudo-god powerhouse, Charlie. It contained a trace of Charlie's real power. After being fused by Shinrei with deep analysis, its power was even greater than before. Almost without any suspense, the soul's shock was easily reflected back by Evil Eye. It was as if Roshea had used a powerful skill on him, and this time his soul was severely shaken. Even if he wasn't heavily injured, he would still suffer a great loss and lose the ability to fight for a while. This scene shocked all the dragons present. Maraskia was an elder of the dragons, one of the few supra-level experts. How could she be defeated in just one encounter? In fact, if Maraskia chose to fight head-on, even if she was defeated, she wouldn't be so weak. She could only blame her intentional sneak attack, which caused the dazzling soul pupil technique to backfire, and she was defeated in one move. The group of griffins watching the battle in the distance let out a long cry, and the dragons and griffins retreated one after another. At the same time, a figure appeared in front of Maraskia. It was a tall and thin man with red hair, wearing a purple robe, and a pair of golden red pupils was shining. The data in analytical eyes was race, dragons, red dragon, comprehensive strength assessment, SS plus physique, SS- strength, SS spirit, SS plus speed, SS- analysis, fire magic talent, fire element damage amplification, soul shield. Danger level, quite high. What did you do to Maraskia? The red dragon saw that the enemy's strength couldn't be underestimated, but he was still a lot weaker than himself. He should be at the same level as Maraskia. It was impossible to kill him directly. He must have used some special means. Nothing, it's just that the golden dragon lady failed in her sneak attack and was hurt instead. Shinrei's voice seemed very calm. If she had chosen to fight fair and square, she wouldn't have lost so much face. The red dragon frowned. Maraskia's strength was only at the middle level of a kingdom, but the dazzling soul pupil technique that she used with her mutated talent and the power of law was no small matter. Even a peak kingdom level powerhouse couldn't ignore it. Who would have thought that Maraskia's pupil technique sneak attack would be broken by this enemy in an instant and sent flying back, causing him to suffer a big loss? This enemy obviously had a strong spiritual force and soul attack, but the red dragon wasn't afraid. This was his strength, and he also had a soul shield, which was the nemesis of souls. Don't be complacent just because you beat Maraskia. You still don't know how powerful the enemy you're facing is. You're also a kingdom-level powerhouse. Tell me your name. As an elder of Ryuzaku, I, the red dragon Rosala, don't kill nameless people. Richard. Shinrei looked at the red dragon indifferently. If it was a peak kingdom-level dragon, he might not be their opponent, but the red dragon in front of him was a fire and magic combat type. For Shinrei, who had the fire phoenix stigmata and magic resistance physique, it was simply a dish delivered to his bowl. Richard? Rosala's eyes flashed, and the surrounding air suddenly became hot. Let's not talk about strength first. You have guts to dare to go against Ryuzaku. Maybe I will engrave your name on the tombstone. Go against Ryuzaku? I should ask you this question instead. What hatred does the Island of Storms have with Ryuzaku? Humph. The Titans killed the dragons and dragon knights of the trial, so they must pay the price. Wind Elemental King Seth said angrily. For at least 100,000 years, the dragons have been using the Island of Storms as the Dragon Knights' trial ground. They have killed the Titans and Wind Elementals more than once. What about this? This is a world where the strong are respected. Rosala said contemptuously. The strong set the rules, and the weak can only follow them. Then why don't you powerhouses go to the holy mountain of light to find the supreme angel for the trial? Shinrei sneered. It's nothing more than bullying the weak and fearing the strong. The Titans are my followers, and the Wind Elementals are my friends. Today, I will seek justice for them. Just you? Rosala rolled his eyes. Let's do it this way. If you can defeat me, my life is yours. If you lose, you have to become my servant. Rosala's wishful thinking was very good. Being able to take in a servant who could control the Titans was equivalent to completely controlling these Titans who could rival ordinary dragons. It was definitely beneficial for his position in the Ryuzuka Council of Elders. The most important thing was that the Red Dragon was sure to win this battle. There was almost no suspense in the battle between the Peak Kingdom and the Intermediate Kingdom. What's more, Rosala's talent was extremely outstanding. In terms of the power of fire, he was second only to the Great Elder in Ryuzuku. You have a good idea! Shinrei snorted coldly. If my strength is above you, your life and death is originally in my hands. If I am defeated by you, I can escape and take revenge. Why should I submit to you? However, do you really think you can defeat me? I will use facts to defeat your blind confidence. Rosala added. Do you dare to make a contract? He even wants to make such a contract? Shinrei's eyes showed hesitation, but he was secretly laughing in his heart. Before he agreed, the Wind Elemental King suddenly said, After so many years of hatred, let's end it all together today. If you want to bet, let's bet big. The lives of the Titans and Wind Elementals are all on the line. On your side, bet all the dragons and knights present, including the lives of those Griffin Knights. As an elemental king with countless years of memory inheritance, Seth's wisdom was naturally extraordinary. He believed in his eyesight and judgment very much. Richard had an amazing fire immunity physique. When he fought with the Fire Elemental King back then, he completely crushed the Fire Elemental King. Now that Richard's strength had risen to the kingdom level, he would naturally win against this red dragon with extremely rich fire elemental power. Rosala's eyes lit up. As long as I defeat my opponent in this battle, not only can I control the enemy and the Titans, but I can also control the Wind Elementals. Your Highness Seth! Shinrei glanced at the Wind Elemental King in surprise, then he understood. He lowered his head, obviously thinking. If you don't dare, you can run away cowardly. I will lead the dragons to kill all the Titans and Wind Elementals. The Red Dragon was confident of his victory, so he threatened. Humph! Don't be too self-righteous, dragons! Shinrei clenched his fists, showing a gesture of finally making up his mind. Today, let's end the 100,000 years of grievances. Okay. The Red Dragon was overjoyed, but he still maintained his cold arrogance on the surface. As you wish. Sign the contract now. This contract was a bit complicated because it involved everyone present. Fortunately, the gold dragon Maraskia had regained some consciousness. With her help, a trace of soul power of everyone present entered the contract concluded by Shinrei and the Red Dragon. If Shinrei lost, including the Titans and Wind Elementals, they must surrender to the Red Dragon Rosala. If Rosala lost, the life and death of all the dragons and knights present would be in the hands of Shinrei. Rosala slowly floated to the open space. This is a solid silver smelting mine. Even if it's a kingdom level, it's not easy to cause great damage. Besides, Maraskia has already set up the dragon inscription barrier. You can do whatever you want. Just one sentence, you will regret it. I didn't want to kill you. Shinrei shook his head. There is no such thing as regret in my dictionary, Rosala said proudly. If you can defeat me, I will die without regrets. Shinrei showed a weird smile. Then, let's get started. I don't have much time to talk nonsense with you. Chapter 838. It looked like just one slash, but in reality, he had already slashed out more than 100 times. Invisible sword aura filled the sky and swept toward the Red Dragon. The Crimson Dragon didn't expect the other party to make the first move. Faced with the powerful aura that was charging at him, Rosala waved his hand calmly, and a powerful fire elemental power blocked in front of him. Countless destructive light balls appeared around Rosala, sealing all dodging directions. Since Shinrei mastered the prototype of the law of destruction, the skill, or aura shot, had been enhanced a lot. The attack mode and number of manipulations had also been greatly improved. Especially after the activation of Blue Polar Star Transformation, the power had made a significant leap. Chenrei's eyes lit up. Water power? Rathala frowned. No. This was not water power. It was a completely different kind of law that seemed to contain endless destruction. The giant beast's momentum was extremely fierce, and cracks soon appeared on the red shield. Rathala felt that the pressure was not to be underestimated. A trace of fire flashed past his golden-red eyes, and a magic wand inlaid with a red gem appeared in his hand. With a wave of the magic wand, the cracks on the red shield quickly healed. In this constant process of destruction and healing, the light of the giant beast gradually dimmed and finally disappeared. However, Rathala had already been pushed back more than 10 meters by this powerful pressure. The previous round of probing allowed Rathala to completely determine the strength of his opponent. Although the attack method was strange and fierce, it should be at the level of the middle rank of the kingdom, and there was still a long way to go before it could compare to the pinnacle kingdom. Moreover, dragons had unique talents, and their combat power generally exceeded that of ordinary powerhouses of the same rank, so there was no suspense in this battle. What was even more strange was that whether it was the Firestorm Dragon or the chains and giant hands of the Red Flame Kingdom, none of them seemed to have caused any damage to the enemy. Was it an illusion? Rathala was very experienced in fighting enemies, and his expression immediately became serious. It seemed that this was a strong opponent, and his combat power had already surpassed the level of his strength on the surface. He could not be judged by common sense, and if he was careless, he was likely to encounter an unexpected failure. Ha ha! Seeing that victory was within his grasp, Rathala could not help but let out a smug laugh. I forgot to tell you, I have a mutated talent called Soul Shield. Any soul attack or invasion will be useless against me. Your strongest soul attack is just a joke in front of me. Now your life is in my hands. As long as I move a finger, you will turn into ashes. Compared with taking the lives of the wind elementals and titans, I value your surrender more. You should be convinced of your defeat. Gold Dragon Marokia was startled. She turned into a blonde woman and rose into the air. While quickly setting up enchantments, she shouted to the dragons and griffin knights behind her. Retreat! This is the draconic forbidden spell, Doomsday Catastrophe. Ruthora accidentally met that gaze, and his body suddenly trembled. It was as if he had been intimidated by some special power, and his aura suddenly dropped. Just as Chenrei was about to make the next move, Rathala's aura skyrocketed. Chenrei only felt the terrifying power of the kingdom surging from all directions. There were already red chains on his body, and he could not move for a while. Rathala's eyes showed strong confidence, and the elemental power on his body began to condense rapidly. He intended to kill Chenrei in one move, but Chenrei was faster, and the second round of attacks had already arrived. The red dragon's eyes locked on Chenrei's figure, and he spat out a string of draconic incantations. As soon as this string of incantations was recited, it turned into physical words, and then scattered into countless sparks that merged into the air. An overwhelming pressure spread around. Rathala waved his hand again, and Chenrei only felt a wave of fire engulfing the aura blade as aftershock, and it rolled back. With a thought, he quickly moved to a distance to avoid this blow. The one with the best eyesight was the gold dragon Maraskia. She was shocked suddenly, and her face was full of disbelief because she saw the starlight. In the mushroom cloud caused by the explosion of Doomsday Catastrophe, the bright light that did not weaken at all. Just SOSO. The enemy who thought he should be severely injured let out a disdainful laugh. Suddenly, there were countless stars in the kingdom of molten lava, slowly rotating with a strange rhythm. A cold breath spread out, and the high-temperature big hand gradually solidified into ice. Together with the chains, it easily shattered. He heard an indifferent voice. A very gorgeous forbidden spell. This reminds me of a certain destructive weapon in my memory. Unfortunately, it is just gorgeous. Rathala's eyes lit up. Although he couldn't control the opponent's life and death with this move, even if he killed Richard, It would still be a huge gain to win this bet and subdue the Titans and wind elementals. Not to mention the strength of the middle stage of the kingdom, even the peak of the kingdom is impossible. After the dragon condensed from flames engulfed Shinrui, its body constantly squirmed and twisted as if it was tearing and chewing the enemy's body. This silver smelting mine was the strongest place on the Storm Island, but the power of the fire dragon was too strong. Shocking damage marks constantly appeared on the ground that was enchanted by the gold dragon. Even the rocks with extremely high melting points had turned into liquid. If you can take my strongest move, then I lose. Rathala was quite scheming. While condensing the power of the kingdom, he used words to push the opponent. The facts are in front of you. There is no need for me to counterattack. You have already lost. Shinrui stopped and looked at the red dragon who had lost his composure. You, all the dragons and knights, your lives are mine. With such terrifying power, not to mention, Richard, even the strongest silver smelting mine in this area would be almost destroyed. From the time Shinrui released Aurora Shot to the time when the red dragon used Firestorm to swallow the Aurora Shot and evolved into an energy dragon to counterattack, it only took a few seconds. In the eyes of the spectators, in just a few blinks of an eye, the white light ball that filled the sky had disappeared. A terrifying red dragon rushed over and engulfed Shinrui in an instant. The flame dragon's movements came to an abrupt halt as cracks appeared on its body. It had actually been torn apart by some enormous force. It turned out to be a wriggling red beast that emitted a terrifying aura. That kind of ruthlessness and mania was even above the purest fire element. Soul Shield, so that's how it is. Shinrui's voice was unexpectedly calm. However, there's one thing you are mistaken about. Soul attacks are not my strongest power. From the beginning until now, I have only warmed up. If that is all you have, then I am sorry to tell you that you have lost. In the distance, Maroshia had already recovered from her shock. The golden dragon reacted quickly, a rainbow-colored dragon scale appearing in her hand and crushing it without hesitation. After tearing apart the fire dragon, the giant beast roared towards Lasala. The red dragon revealed a vigilant expression, and a red translucent shield appeared in front of it, blocking the giant beast's path. Impossible! Lasala, who had exhausted too much energy from casting a forbidden spell, was gasping for breath. He stared fixedly at the figure that was strolling leisurely in the lava of the Crimson Flame Kingdom, his aura not weakening in the slightest. Apart from a few cracks on his armor, the terrifying draconic forbidden spell actually didn't cause any damage. All right. After all, the polar transformation's time was limited, and Shinrui wanted to finish the battle quickly. As soon as he heard this suggestion, he agreed without even thinking. The opponent clearly only had the strength of around the middle stage of the kingdom, but this law of destruction was far above the law of fire that he had comprehended, or it could be said that it was a kind of innate suppression. His Crimson Flame Kingdom actually showed faint signs of collapse. The terrifying feeling lasted for half an hour before gradually fading, and a huge mushroom cloud appeared in the sky above the battle in the distance. The power of the Aura Blade lay not only in its sharpness and ability to hurt people from a distance, but also in its formlessness and elusiveness. But Lasala's fire elemental power actually turned the Aura Blade into a tangible object. What was even more amazing was that it could directly burn energy that contained the law of destruction. It was worthy of being a nation-level red dragon with the strongest fire talent. More than 100 blades, wrapped in flames, appeared in everyone's sight. In the incredible heat, the blades became thinner at a speed visible to the naked eye, evaporating before they could even touch the red dragon. Shinrui didn't give the red dragon too much time to react. He put his hands together, and the Aurora Shot, from all directions, whizzed toward Lasala in the center. Lasala didn't panic. The condensed power burst out, and the surrounding fire elements began to rotate rapidly. Under the horrifying high temperature, everyone's vision gradually became blurred. This battle would be related to the fate of everyone present. Whether it was the Titans, wind elementals, or dragons and knights, their attention was focused on Shinrui and the red dragon, Lasala. The red gem at the top of Lasala's magic staff emitted a strong light. The magma hand squeezed hard, and the temperature suddenly rose. The nearby rocks melted one after another, turning into a dazzling high-temperature stream that crisscrossed. The red dragon thought that his strength was higher than the opponent by a small realm, but he was actually forced to retreat so far. He felt embarrassed. As he was about to fight back, he suddenly had a warning sign. He saw Chunrei's figure suddenly appearing in front of him with purple light in his eyes. At the same time, the ground instantly turned into a fiery sea of lava. A giant hand condensed from lava stretched out from the sea of fire and held Chunrei in his hand. The dragons and griffin knights hurriedly flew away. The titans and the wind elementals also quickly retreated under the signal of the wind elemental king. Chunrei's figure flashed, and he had already moved in front of Lasala. He made a sword shape and slashed down. The red dragon's entire body turned into a huge fiery red storm with amazing momentum. The aurora shot that rushed into the fiery storm was burned out under the powerful fire rule of the peak country level. After the fiery red storm swallowed the aurora shot, its power did not weaken. Instead, it became even more amazing. The flames converged into the image of a giant dragon, flapping its wings and pouncing straight at Chunrei. When the spectators on both sides retreated for about a kilometer again, the ground suddenly shook. Their vision instantly became distorted and blurred. They could no longer see the situation in the center of the battle. They could vaguely feel that the ground seemed to have become a crazily erupting volcano, and the sky was constantly raining flames. Then, their bodies were repelled by a terrifying shock wave. All their senses were filled with fiery red and heat. They could no longer see anything else. Stubborn. You will only seek your own death. Lasala sneered. Your mouth is much harder than your fist. It seems that you won't admit your failure if I don't let you suffer a little. Chapter 839. Boom! 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 The ground shook violently. Rosala had already transformed into his dragon form, and a series of highly concentrated fire meteors rushed toward the armored figure in front of him. There were continuous explosions, and the red dragon roared hysterically. I don't believe it! The bombardment got closer and closer, and the rhythm became shorter and shorter. This meant that the target was getting closer to the fire meteors. Boom! A fire meteor right in front of Rosala was shattered into countless sparks and disappeared. A fist shining with starlight appeared in front of Rosala's eyes. This fist instantly enlarged, and a large flaming meteor flew in the opposite direction. It was Rosala's body. This fist was extremely powerful. Although Rosala had cast a shield in time, he was still sent flying. Chunrei's figure instantly appeared in midair. Without waiting for Rosala to stabilize himself, he kicked the huge body high into the air. Countless white balls of light appeared in his hands, and like homing missiles, he shot them into the air. Dull explosions sounded continuously, and the bursts of fire turned into particles and dissipated. After a long time, the dazzling white light was finally extinguished. Rosala's body floated down and landed on the ground. Although he had landed safely with the help of Feather Fall, the red dragon was in a very sorry state. His protective spells were gone, and his body was full of wounds. His hard scales were either broken or peeled off, and drops of hot blood fell to the ground, giving off green smoke. This was because dragons had strong bodies. If it had been a magician, he would have been smashed to pieces. You've already lost. Chunrei's voice sounded. Admit defeat. The rules of the contract between the two were that one side would admit defeat or die. Considering Ryuzuka's power and the familiar face he had seen among the Dragon Knights, Chunrei did not want to make too much of an enemy. He planned to give the red dragon a chance. Rosala's left eye was swollen, and he could only open his right eye. He shouted, Fire immunity! It must be! Despicable guy! You have this kind of constitution. You tricked me into signing the contract. If he still didn't understand by now, then the red dragon didn't deserve to be called the elder of the dragons. However, this discovery shocked him even more. Those who had fire immunity were either fire elementals or the bloodline of some ancient level-surpassing demonic beasts. Could it be that this enemy? Ridiculous! Chenrei said disdainfully. You were the one who proposed the contract. As for your physique, will you reveal your trump card to your enemy in battle? The red dragon was speechless. Not only did he lose his life, but he also lost the lives of all the dragons, dragon knights, and griffin knights present. As an elder of Ryuzaku, this was not only a great humiliation, but also an intolerable failure. I will not admit defeat! Rosala gritted his teeth and looked at Chenrei. I am an elder of Ryuzaku. If you dare to kill me, His Majesty the Dragon Emperor Palgoris and Great Elder Maria will not let you off. Not only you, but everyone related to you will be buried with you. You don't even dare to face failure. Is this the Elder of Ryuzaku? Chenrei's voice became cold. Congratulations, your threat successfully aroused my murderous intent. You are the one who buried your last chance of survival. Chenrei's foundation was in the demon realm, so he was not afraid of any forces in the human world at all. He was only concerned about the Titans and the wind elementals. Having said that, based on the attitude shown by Rosala and the dragons, even if Chenrei let the other party go and rescinded the contract, the dragons would not be grateful. Instead, they would hold a grudge, and the Storm Island would definitely suffer terrible revenge in the future. Therefore, he had to win this battle. If Rosala refused to admit defeat, then even if he had to kill this red dragon and start a feud with the Dragon Valley, he had to hold the lives of the dragons and dragon knights in his hands through the contract. This was the biggest bargaining chip to fight against Ryuzaku. This was a world where whoever had the bigger fist was in the right. At least on a certain level, one must have the fist and the bargaining chip in order to be reasonable. Rosala was about to speak when he suddenly felt a shuddering sense of alarm. The air was instantly filled with a violent aura. This aura was very similar to the wriggling behemoth that had destroyed his Inferno Dragon. That meandering behemoth gave Rosala a very strange feeling. It seemed to have a natural restraint. When he took that blow just now, he was forced to use the red burning wand. Now that this violent breath appeared again, the intensity was actually dozens of times or even more than before. Even if he was at his peak, Rosala did not have the confidence to take it, let alone in this situation where his strength was greatly reduced. Moreover, the red dragon clearly felt that the murderous intent exuded by the other party was by no means a bluff. This person really knew how to kill. The starlight of the blue planet kingdom shone brightly, and there was a scorching and anxious breath in the starlight. This was the realm of summer that was most suitable for the roar of the fire dragon. At the same time, a pair of red light wings appeared behind Chenrei's armor and merged with the star wings. This was the love of the fire phoenix. It could further increase the power of the fire dragon, and it could also focus the attack of the roar of the fire dragon. On one point. After all, Rosala was a powerhouse at the peak of the kingdom. Even though he had the mark of the fire phoenix, which was the strongest artifact, Chenrei had never underestimated his opponent. Instead, the colorful lights that were pushed away rolled back and turned into streaks of green light that revolved around the flame dragons. The flame dragons' movements quickly slowed down. There was no special cold air, but in less than 10 seconds, they were completely frozen into ice sculptures. Chenrei's pupils suddenly contracted. With the buffs from the Blue Star Kingdom, Summer Realm, and Phoenix's Nostalgia, the ultimate move Scorching Dragon Roar that was cast in the strongest state of Polar Star transformation was actually completely frozen. The blue light exuded a strange aura, and it quickly spread to Chenrei along the flame dragons. In an instant, all the light seemed to pause, and the blue light that was about to hit its target missed, and Chenrei's figure had disappeared. The ice sculptures of the flame dragons that had lost the support of power were cut into countless pieces under the colorful light, turning into powder and disappearing without a trace. Chenrei's figure appeared in the distance, panting slightly. It was definitely not an easy thing to forcibly intercept the roar of the flame dragons. Just the power of the backlash alone almost made him seriously injured, But what was more terrifying was the colorful light. If he had not used the power of time at the critical moment, and moved out of the range of the colorful light, his body would have been turned into powder like the ice sculptures of the flame dragons. However, just as he landed, he suddenly felt that he was locked by a terrible spiritual power. This kind of spiritual power was extremely terrifying. Chenrui keenly felt that as long as he moved a little, he would be destroyed. Chenrui sighed secretly. The power of the colorful light had far exceeded the scope of what the strength of the polar star transformation could bear, or in other words, it had already surpassed the level of the kingdom transformation. The colorful light intertwined and gradually condensed into a figure, appearing in front of Chenrui. It was a purple-haired woman about 30 years old. She was beautiful, wearing a sky-blue dress and a pair of glasses, exuding a mature and moving charm. The red dragon Lasorla turned into a human form and bowed to the purple-haired woman. "Madam Maria!" The gold dragon Marovskaya also flew over with the dragons and saluted respectfully. Chenrui looked at the purple-haired woman in horror. Judging from the way the dragons addressed her, this woman should be the great elder of Ryuzaku, Maria. Analytical eyes showed that Maria's strength was SSS-, which was a powerhouse who had entered the demigod level. However, what surprised Chenrui the most was not the identity of the great elder or the demigod level strength, but Maria's somewhat familiar appearance, and analytical eyes showed that her race was the fairy dragon. Chapter 840. Maria's appearance and fairy dragon identity surprised Chenrui. He remembered that Rala once said that she originally came from the human world and entered the demon realm because of research and exploration. Then, could this fairy dragon great elder in front of him be related to Rala? However, even if there was some similarity in appearance, being a fairy dragon, or even being related, it did not mean anything. The battle between dragons was not inferior to that of humans or demons. Aiguillas and Eucalyptus were the best examples. It was not wise to rashly mention Rala's name. Anyway, he had already confirmed the other party's identity as the Ryuzaku Great Elder. He should try to get through the current difficulties first. Seeing that the Great Elder dominated the enemy with an overwhelming advantage as soon as she appeared, the red dragon Ruthora was overjoyed. He quickly stepped forward and said, "Madam Maria, fortunately you arrived in time." Maria raised her hand and stopped Ruthora's report. She just looked at Chenrui with interest. "Armor of Faith? No. If it's Armor of Faith, you're either a demigod or a believer of a powerhouse. However, even a believer of a false god may not have an Armor of Faith in this form and strength." Maria gently held her chin. "Your rule power is also a bit peculiar. Its power is far above that of ordinary national-level powerhouses, especially the time rule. However, I feel that your true understanding of the rule doesn't seem to reach the national level. No matter what, you should be a very good research subject." The word, research subject, and the gaze behind the glasses gave Chenrui a familiar feeling. It was as if he had returned to the scene when he first met Rala. It seemed that the fairy dragons all had the common trait of mad scientists. "Madam Maria has already entered the realm of demigod. Although I have some special small abilities, I am far from being your opponent." Chenrui shook his head. "However, Ruthora has already admitted defeat just now. According to the rules of the contract, except for Madam Maria, the life and death of all the dragons and knights present are already in my hands. Madam may be able to kill me easily, but before that, I have complete confidence to activate the power of the contract to bury them with me." Melia frowned and looked at Ruthorla. "Is that so?" Rosala's eyelids twitched guiltily as he cursed his bad luck. He had just admitted defeat and Maria had arrived. If she had come earlier, the red dragon did not dare to say such things in front of Melia, so he just evaded. "This guy is very cunning. He is immune to the power of fire. I was tricked by him into signing a contract, and in the end, a loss is a loss." Maria snorted coldly. "Your stupidity and arrogance not only cost you your own life, but also so many of your kinsmen and knights." Rosala lowered his head, not daring to make a sound. Marilla ignored the crimson dragon, and turned her gaze back to Chenrui. She nodded slowly. Your law of time is very mysterious. I don't have the confidence to kill you in one blow before your will activates the power of the contract. Thank you, Lady Melia, for your frankness. Chenrui bowed slightly. Actually, I also know that it's not a good thing to hold the lives of so many dragons and knights. So, if the conditions allow, I can consider canceling the contract. You can cancel the contract? A strange look flashed in Maria's eyes. After entering the kingdomization, he already had the ability to cancel the contract. However, this cancellation was strictly limited by strength, and there would be a considerable price to pay. Powerhouses of the same realm couldn't cancel the contract. In other words, people of the same kingdom level couldn't cancel the contract with each other. Otherwise, Rosala would have done it a long time ago. However, even Maria did not expect that for Chenrui. As long as he spent a certain amount of aura value, he could easily cancel any spiritual link. It's just an insignificant talent. Chenrui shrugged and added, It's just that I have to pay a certain price. Rosala's face became even uglier. The other party can actually cancel the contract. Then, even if I lose this battle, I can still renege on the debt. It turns out that from the moment I signed the contract, I, the Sir Elder, have become an out-and-out sucker. A strange light flashed behind Maria's glasses. It's really surprising that it's insignificant. So, what are your conditions? Chenrui glanced at the wind elementals and tightened behind him. What I want is very simple. Just as he turned his head, the mental energy that had locked onto him immediately changed. Waves of powerful soul ripples assaulted him, clearly trying to use a control-type secret technique, while he was distracted. However, these soul ripples disappeared without a trace like a clay ox entering the sea. Chenrui had already turned his head as if nothing had happened just now. He just looked at Maria lightly. One word: peace. What do you think, sir? Your power is very unique. You've actually isolated the soul erosion power of a demigod, rendering my sneak attack completely ineffective. Now, I believe that you have the ability to break the contract. Marilla did not hide her sneak attack at all. With your ability and the bargaining chips that you control, you do indeed have the right to negotiate. Facing such a demigod powerhouse, Chenrui was already prepared. He had been wearing the God-eating mask on his face just in case. As one of the 7 artifacts, the God-eating mask could be completely immune to soul control, causing Maria's sneak attack to fail. Even without the God-eating mask, the super system could also resolve it. Peace? What a wonderful word! The great elder of the fairy dragons smiled. She looked extraordinarily charming. Within 10,000 years, the dragons will not set foot on the Island of Storms. What do you think? What about after 10,000 years? Chenrui shook his head. What I want is real peace, not a short armistice. Whether it is my follower, the Titan, or my friend, the Wind Elementals, they have suffered considerable losses and injuries in the past trial. Ryuzuka must compensate. Compensation? Rathala, who had been silent, sneered. Do you think you are qualified? The loser is not qualified to speak. Chenrui's words made Rathala blush. Maria glanced at the red dragon. Shut up. Rathala shuddered and swallowed all the words he wanted to say. He suddenly stopped talking. It seemed that the great elder of the fairy dragon was quite authoritative. What compensation do you want? At present, the lives of the 2 dragons' elders, many dragons, dragon knights, and the griffin knights of the Longhorn Empire were in the hands of the other party. Maria did not intend to take this risk. The specific compensation will be decided by my friend, Sir Wind Elemental King Seth. I only want to emphasize one point. Chenrui raised a finger. The Dragon Knight trial is the source of hatred, so Ryuzuka needs to give the Island of Storms a promise. Maria frowned slightly. Never hold the trial on the Island of Storms? Chenrui smiled and shook his head. Unfortunately, you guess wrong, Madame Maria. The promise I want is the opposite. The future trial, or a part of the trial, will be held on the Island of Storms. This sentence greatly exceeded everyone's expectations. Melia pushed up her glasses and said, I don't understand what you mean. The Titans and Wind Elementals have considerable strength. It will be excellent training for the Dragons or Dragon Knights to improve their training and improvement. However, the trial does not necessarily have to be carried out in the form of pure killing, especially with this kind of irresolvable hostility and hatred. Maria's eyes lit up. Go on. In addition to simple battles, there are various difficulties and traps. Only those who truly pass these tests will be the final winners. Of course, the path of training is arduous and dangerous. There may be accidental casualties, but it is a completely different concept compared to the previous war. Chinrui's voice had a special appeal. Although I can't deny the hatred of the past is the past after all. As long-lived dragons, you should know how to look forward better than me. As long as Ryuzuku is willing to offer sincerity and friendship, the Island of Storms will become the best training place for the dragons. There is no doubt that this is a win-win situation. As soon as these words came out, even the red dragon who had been gritting his teeth showed a thoughtful look. What I admire about you is not only your ability and courage, but also your eloquence. Maria took a deep look at Chinrui. This proposal sounds quite good, but no matter how beautiful the description is, it is not as convincing as the truth. The dragon's trial is a very important event. I am still skeptical about the difficulties, traps, and even the best training place for the dragons that you mentioned. Chinrui smiled slightly. His fingers moved quickly in the air, and symbols condensed with the power of the rule jumped out. Magic circle? Maria's eyes lit up. High concentration elemental circle. An attribute overlap. Wait a minute, that is the hexagon space structure. Amazing magic circle attainments. Your magic circle level has at least reached the Quasi-Grand Master level. And you are a very powerful Quasi-Grand Master. It's just that. Chinrui didn't explain. His gesture changed, and the symbols changed again. Dragon inscription. Gold Dragon Maraskia blurted out. Although the red dragon Ruthora was a little surprised, there was more disdain in his eyes. Showing off dragon inscription in front of the dragons is simply asking to be humiliated. However, the red dragon's disdain quickly turned into surprise, and finally into horror. An expert would know when he stretched out his hand. Ruthora had studied dragon inscription for many years, and he was Ryuzuku's dragon inscription expert. His attainments were only below Great Elder Maria. However, although the dragon inscription displayed by the mysterious man in front of him did not have the power of dragon might, the true level was far above him, and not even inferior to Maria. Maria's purple eyes also flashed with disbelief. When she was about to speak, the jumping symbols changed again. This was a kind of rune that was completely different from the magic circle, or dragon inscription. Just a few symbols could feel that kind of ancient and desolate spirit. Maria was suddenly moved, and she lost her voice. God's language ancient runes! Wind elementals, titans, plus magic circle, dragon inscription, and ancient runes. The visor and mask on Chinrui's face disappeared, revealing a confident smile. Does this prove that Storm Island will become the best training place for the dragons? Chapter 841. Maria had recovered from the surprise. Her burning eyes seemed to be looking at Chinrui for the first time. Your name? Richard, the inheritor of the ancient alchemy civilization. Ancient alchemy civilization? Maria was slightly startled, then she nodded. Maria, Great Elder of Ryuzuku, I can represent His Majesty Dragon Emperor Palgoris with full authority. This was Maria really putting Chinrui in an equal position. Of course, in addition to the ability Chinrui had shown, the contract that controlled the lives of the dragons and knights was the most important reason. Then, Richard, I'm very puzzled. What is your purpose? What can you get? I don't want this kind of unnecessary casualties and hatred to continue. Compared with being an enemy of Ryuzuku, I prefer to be a friend. Chinrui smiled and said, Of course, there are other reasons that are not convenient to explain for the time being. However, for Ryuzuku, this kind of cooperation is equally beneficial and harmless. Although you didn't use any threatening words in your words, I still felt a clear threat. Maria's eyes narrowed. You control the lives of so many dragons. I don't seem to have much choice. Well, we can sign the contract. Shinrei thought for a while and condensed the soul contract in his hand. Please take a look. What do you think of these terms? Let me take a look first. Ryuzuku's dragons are not allowed to do any harm to the contractors. If there are accidental casualties in the trial, Ryuzuku is not allowed to harm the titans and wind elementals who set up the trial. Both parties are long-term partners. When there is a crisis, they must provide voluntary assistance. This one needs to be modified. Maria looked at it carefully one by one, constantly pointing out the contents that needed to be modified. After confirming the contents of the contract, Maria tapped her finger and signed her name. Shinrei smiled. Great Elder is really a straightforward person. As he said, he also signed the contract. The contract turned into 2 rays of light and disappeared into Maria and Shinrei's bodies, representing the establishment of the contract. Maria was slightly surprised. She thought that the other party would put forward some conditions. She didn't expect it to go so smoothly. The fairy dragon Great Elder exchanged glances with the red and golden dragons, and she was shocked. Richard, you didn't cancel the dual contract just now? Powerhouses above nationalization could sign more than one contract. For example, they could have an equality contract and a master-servant contract at the same time, but they could only sign one contract of the same type. In other words, they couldn't sign 2 equality contracts at the same time. If Shinrei wanted to accept this cooperation contract, he must first cancel the previous contract. Oh, I forgot to explain. Shinrei looked like he just remembered it. My talent seems to be able to accept more than 2 equal contracts. The face of the Red Dragon Elder twitched for a while. Looking at his expression, he should be holding back a greeting like, "Forget your sister." A cold light flashed past Maria's glasses. Her original plan was to perfunctorily cancel the key contract that controlled the life and death of the dragons and get rid of the hostage threat. As for this cooperation contract, with her demigod realm, she could cancel it as long as she paid a certain price. Regardless of whether she really cooperated with the other party in the end, the initiative was always in her hands. However, Richard, actually swallowed 2 contracts without batting an eyelid. No wonder he didn't mention any guarantee conditions just now. Both contracts were valid, which meant that the other party not only still controlled the lives of those dragons, but she also couldn't do anything to him. Shinrei observed her expression and immediately said, "Don't get me wrong, Madame Maria. I just want to complete the planning and cooperation matters of the experimental ground first. After that, I will definitely cancel the previous contract." Maria's expression remained unchanged. She nodded. Okay, but since it is a cooperation, it must be 2-sided. The experimental ground is a big project, so it also needs an expert from Ryuzuku to modify and confirm it. How about this? I will use the water space array to teleport a magic circle expert from Ryuzuku. He is also proficient in dragon inscription and ancient runes, but it will take a day to build this space array. What do you think? Okay. Shinrei nodded. The time limit of polar transformation was almost up. This suggestion was exactly what he wanted. So, the 2 sides stopped fighting. Maria and the 2 elders led the dragons, dragon knights, and griffin knights to camp on the spot, while Shinrei returned to the cloud palace with the wind elementals and the titans. As soon as Shinrei and the others left, the red dragon elder Rosala, who was behind Maria, couldn't help but ask, "Great Elder, why did you cancel the contract just now? You are a demigod as long as—" Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Maria in annoyance. "Do you think I don't want to? I don't know what secret technique or talent that guy has, but I can't cancel the contract by force." As the Great Elder, Maria was naturally unwilling to be schemed against like this. She was about to use the power of the rule to cancel the contract by force, but she was surprised to find that the power of the cooperation contract she had just signed was actually integrated with her soul. Unless she was completely annihilated, it was impossible to cancel it. The red dragon and gold dragon's expressions changed at the same time. This situation could only happen when one's own strength was lower than the other party's realm. This, Richard, in front of them was obviously only at national level. How was it possible? Humph! Even if you can't cancel the contract by force, the contract only stipulates that the dragons of Ryuzuku cannot harm him. A strange light flashed past Maria's eyes. Ryuzuku doesn't just have dragons. Maria showed a look of understanding. Great Elder, the expert you want to teleport is… Lord Span? Rosala's eyes lit up. That guy only restrained me by relying on his immunity to fire. If it was Lord Span, he would definitely be able to smash that guy to pieces, and the contract would naturally be gone. Not necessarily, but the contract definitely has to be cancelled. Also, that kid has to be taught a lesson for daring to play tricks in front of me. Maria glared at the Red Dragon Elder. Actually, the idea of the trial grounds is quite interesting. But you, Rosala, not only did you humiliate Ryuzuku, you almost lost the lives of so many of your kinsmen. You will have to contribute 1/5 of your wealth as a fine, and you will have to reflect on yourself for 100 years after returning to Ryuzuku. The Red Dragon was drenched in cold sweat. Understood, Great Elder. Although 1/5 of the wealth was quite painful for the dragon, he did not dare to disobey the will of the Great Elder. The Great Elder was well known for being black-bellied in Ryuzuku. Even His Majesty the Dragon Emperor had to retreat. If he refused, the loss of wealth would probably be more than 1/5. On the other side, Shinrei and the Wind Elemental King and others returned to the Cloud Palace. Wind Elemental King Seth's first sentence was, "Why didn't you wait for the Red Dragon to severely injure or kill me before attacking?" Shinrei was startled. He shook his head without answering the question. "You also didn't abandon the Titan. Ryuzuku also hurt the Wind Elementals in the previous trial, and the Elemental King has the dignity of the Elemental King. Then I also have my own principles," Shinrei said sternly. "Although I don't understand the truth of the Elemental War, I believe that even my best friend Moore doesn't want his biggest opponent to accidentally fall outside the elemental battlefield." The Wind Elemental King stared at him for a moment and nodded slightly. "The Earth Elemental King is right. Once the dragon's trial field is successfully established, the threat of the dragons to the Titans and the Wind Elementals will naturally no longer exist. I will remember this favor. In the future, the Wind Elementals will not be stingy with their power where we need to contribute." The Titan leader, Oceanus, also said, "Great Master, you saved the Titans again. Since you fight so hard for the Titans also vow to fight for you. From today on, you are the true Master of the Titans. If the Master can create new Titans in the future, I can exert the will of the leader and let them completely submit to the Master's control." Shinrei's eyes lit up. The crystal plate he obtained from Daruda's secret vault happened to record the complete information of making Titans. The Titan giants were powerful, but they were arrogant and unruly by nature, which was why they had rebelled in the past. Now that they had Oceanus Will as their leader, they could completely subdue and control the Titan giants. This was definitely an unexpected surprise. One of the necessary materials for the Titans was the wind core of the Wind Elementals. Daruda had forcibly extracted it from the Wind Elementals back then, causing the death of the Wind Elementals and causing the war launched by the Wind Elemental King. According to Seth, as the Wind Elemental King, he could use the Wind Origin Fragment to create a higher quality wind core, but the quantity was limited. As a reward for Shinrei's help to the Wind Elementals, Seth was willing to provide some wind cores regularly. After this problem was solved, Shinrei was relieved. He deactivated polar transformation with peace of mind and fell into a protective sleep. It was a peaceful night. In the afternoon of the next day, there was news from the dragons that the expert sent from Ryuzuku had arrived. Shinrei immediately rushed to the silver mining area. This time, he did not use polar transformation. Instead, he used the breath-holding skill to limit his strength breath to the level of lesser demon to confuse the other party's judgment. The expert, sent by Ryuzuka this time, was called Span. He was a silver-haired man with a handsome face and extraordinary temperament. What surprised Chunrei the most was that Span's ears were sharp and long. Even without analytical eyes, he could judge that he was an elf. The expert sent by Ryuzuka turned out to be an elf. This elf's strength was SS+, the peak of the kingdom. His silver eyes just glanced at Chunrei faintly, and it gave him a huge mental pressure. Chunrei suddenly felt a strong sense of vigilance in his heart. Since it was an elf, the clause in the contract that Ryuzuka's dragons shall not hurt the contractor was naturally invalid. Judging from the data and analysis, this elf was a dual cultivator of magic and combat. Except for the elf's relatively weak physique, which was only SS, the rest of his strength, spirit, and speed had reached the strongest SS+. Furthermore, he was proficient in the power of wind and water. This was a terrifying enemy. Whether it was the body of light, or the fire phoenix divine mark, it was useless. Chapter 842. Little guy, don't be nervous or threaten me with the dragon's lives. Span showed a handsome and masculine smile. I heard from Melia that you are proficient in magic circle, dragon inscription and ancient runes, and that interesting trial field idea. I'm very interested in it and want to see it. I'm sorry to embarrass Sir Span. Chunrei took a few deep breaths and took out a magic design drawing. This is the preliminary design of the trial field. Due to the lack of time, many aspects are not mature enough. Sir is an expert, please advise me. It's a multidimensional design drawing? In such a short time you can design this. The elf took it casually. After taking a look, her face suddenly became dignified. 16 yuan ancient runes? No, 23 yuan. The elf's eyes were firmly attracted. Her eyes could no longer leave the design drawing. She began to discuss with Chunrei with great interest. That, Richard, can we add a phrase of long-distance teleportation to the handle of this string? Sir's idea is very good, but there are too many runes for long-distance teleportation. It will make the whole inscription appear overlong. Let's just change it to random teleportation. Yes. This freezing trap is very clever, but I think the induction mode needs to be improved. Seeing that the elf was completely immersed in the blueprint, she even forgot to teach the opponent a memorable lesson that she said in advance, and no hint worked. The fairy dragon's great elder's face couldn't help but turn black. Span! Melia, who couldn't bear it, finally shouted. The elf glanced at the fairy dragon's great elder. What? Melia winked. This time, Chunrei understood and was secretly vigilant. However, the elf acted as if she didn't see it. Ah? Then, she continued to discuss with Chunrei. Melia. Chunrei. Somehow, this handsome elf gave Chunrei a very special feeling. This feeling was a little familiar. Span's knowledge was extremely profound, especially in the field of magic matrices, which was far above Chunrei's. He should have been close to or even reached the Grandmaster level, which benefited Chunrei a lot. In terms of dragon inscription, the elves were not inferior to Chunrei. The only weakness was the ancient runes. This was thanks to the basic grammar slates of ancient runes that Chunrei and Rala had studied together, plus Charlie's teaching. Span was extremely interested in ancient runes. He didn't care about his manners and directly sat on the ground to discuss. The more the elf and Chunrei chatted, the more congenial they became. They seemed to regret not having met each other earlier. They even kowtowed to each other, and became sworn brothers, completely ignoring the various hints from Melia. The great elder fairy maiden's body was already faintly emitting sparks from her rage, but for some reason, she had been restraining herself from exploding. Wait! The elf suddenly frowned and drew a string of ancient runes on the ground. How did you conceive this quaternary compound phrase? Chunrei took a look. This quaternary compound phrase was one of Rala's most commonly used grammars. It was also her original grammar. It was regarded as a very clever basic improvement that could greatly improve the effectiveness of ancient runes. I learned this phrase from a friend of mine. Her level of ancient runes is even above mine. Her? The elf's ears moved, and she slowly stood up. What's her name? Shenrui wanted to say Rala's name, but he suddenly thought of something and shook his head. I don't know. A chill came, and Shenrui couldn't help but shiver. The elf, who seemed friendly and harmless just now, suddenly exuded a terrible aura, overwhelming and overwhelming. This kind of power was extremely terrible, far above the Red Dragon Elder. Shenrui didn't use polar transformation now, and only had the strength of S++. He was immediately suppressed by the powerful aura of the peak of the kingdom, and couldn't move. You are one of the most talented young people I have ever seen in my 100,000 years of life. I don't hide my admiration for you at all, and I even ignored Melia's hint to teach you a lesson. The sharpness in the elf's silver pupils almost materialized, and the surrounding ground began to show traces of cracks. Her voice also became unprecedentedly cold. But today, you must tell me where she is. Otherwise, even if you control the lives of all the dragons in the contract, I will not hesitate to kill you. Shenrui raised his head and looked at the elf's silver pupils with the power of the evil eye. I want to know the reason. Why are you so eager to find her? Because she is my daughter, the daughter of my elf king, Span. Savatiga! Span's aura swelled to the peak. Whether you have heard of my reputation or not, you only have 10 seconds. Otherwise, I will interrogate you directly from your soul. Daughter? Shenrui was dumbfounded. Wait a minute, Sir Span, I think I or you are mistaken. The friend I mentioned is not an elf. Who said his daughter is an elf? The great elder of the fairy dragon snorted coldly. He is my husband, and our daughter is of course a fairy dragon. Counting the time, that willful little guy has run away from home for 20,000 years. The fairy dragon was the only female among the dragons. They had a special attribute, that was, all the girls they gave birth to were fairy dragons, and the boys were of the paternal race. Ma, husband? Shenrui looked at the elf king and then at the great elder of the fairy dragon. He was instantly confused. Well, no one stipulated that the spouse of dragons must be dragons. Take Shenrui himself as an example. He had a lover of demons and dragons. What is your daughter's name? Rala! The elf king and the great elder of the fairy dragon said at the same time. The answer was revealed. After a long time, it turns out to be my mother-in-law and mother-in-law. No wonder I have that kind of familiar feeling with the elves. Shenrui finally understood from whom Rala's pseudo-natural days inherited. I think there is a big misunderstanding between us. Shenrui scratched his head and looked at the dragons and knights around him. Let's find a quiet place to talk about this alone. I will tell both of you in detail. A few minutes later, in an independent space enchantment. What did you say? Span's eyes widened. Rala and you, she's my wife. You didn't hear it wrong, Sir Span. Shenrui nodded with a wry smile. We are all family. I'm very sorry to offend both of you. Don't worry, I will remove the contract that controls the dragons later. Maria showed a suspicious look. Why should I believe you? Shenrui thought for a while and took out an amulet. This is the wyvern amulet that Rala made for me. It was once infused with the power of her colorful scales. Unfortunately, the colorful scales were exhausted to save me. Only this empty shell is left. The colorful scales were the life-saving scales of the fairy dragon. Once consumed, it would take 100 years to regenerate a new one. It was very precious. If it was not voluntary, external forces could not remove this scale. The wyvern amulet had saved Shenrui's life twice. Although it had lost its effectiveness, because it was personally made by Rala, it was of great significance, so he kept it by his side. Span took the amulet, looked at it for a while, and nodded. It's indeed Rala's work. She didn't inherit her father's exquisite craftsmanship at all. She carved a dragon into a duck. Although the elf said so, her eyes were very excited. She carefully held the amulet made by her daughter with both hands, as if it would break if she was not careful. Dragon god above! Rala! How is she now? Maria's glasses were covered with a layer of mist. Her voice trembled slightly, completely losing the majesty of the Great Elder. This willful little girl, there was no news of her after she left that year. I don't know where she went. She's very good. I have found the elemental power of the 6 major elements for her. Just last month, she has successfully condensed the 6-element kingdom. Of course, Chenrui's words had the intention of showing off. After all, in front of him was a terrifying creature named Mother-in-law. 6-element kingdom! Maria and Span were both taken aback. Maria said excitedly, "Even in the bloodline memory of the fairy dragon, there are only a handful of geniuses who can successfully build the 6-element kingdom. I didn't expect Rala to succeed. Of course, don't you see whose daughter she is?" The Elf King looked proud. He looked at Chenrui with more satisfaction and asked, "Where is Rala? Take us to see her immediately." This? Chenrui hesitated for a moment. "Before answering this question, I want to ask, why did Rala run away from home?" The Elf King and the Great Elder of the Fairy Dragon quieted down at the same time. The couple stared at each other for a while, then Span spoke first. "It's all Maria's fault. She agreed to the proposal of the second elder, Pylon, and said that she would marry her daughter to his son, Carlo." Escape from marriage? Chenrui suddenly realized. No wonder Rala has been unwilling to talk about the past of the original human world. This marriage escape is good. Without the escape, he wouldn't have his beloved fairy Miss Long now. Maria snorted coldly. "I just see that Carla grew up with Rala and has been bullied by Rala. If she marries him, Rala will have the final say in the family in the future. What's wrong with that? Mother-in-law's criteria for choosing a husband seems a bit weird." Chenrui wiped the cold sweat on his face. "The problem is that my daughter didn't think that way. In the end, baby Rala was so angry that she beat up Carlo and robbed him of all his wealth. In the end, she ran away from home, and she left for 20,000 years. Escape from marriage plus robbery?" Chenrui suddenly sympathized with Carlo. Maria said, not to be outdone, "You still have the nerve to say that? After Rala disappeared, you knocked on their door, beat up their father and son, and robbed all the wealth of the Pylan family. If it wasn't for my sake, would His Majesty Palgoris let you off so easily? Humph! Daring to cause Rala's disappearance, I'm already giving you face by not destroying his family," the elf said proudly. "Domineering. Father-in-law is mighty." Chenrui almost worshipped him. Like father, like daughter. Maria suddenly thought of something. "By the way, what about the wealth? You haven't handed it over to me, right? Did you throw it all into your research of ancient runes?" "What?" the Elf King asked Chenrui, as if he didn't hear it clearly. Chenrui. Chapter 843. About 3 hours later, the Elf King, the Great Elder of the Fairy Dragons, and Chenrui appeared in front of everyone. All the dragons and knights felt that the power of the contract that controlled their lives had been lifted. Immediately afterward, Great Elder Gomiria announced that Ryuzaku and the Island of Storms had officially formed a strategic partnership. The Island of Storms would become a fixed trial place for the dragons and dragon knights from now on. This time, the Dragon Knight trial would be conducted in the latest form. The formation of this strategic partnership was beyond the expectations of many dragons. The purpose of this visit was to eliminate all the titans and wind elementals on the Island of Storms. They even brought the Griffin Legion of the Longhuang Empire, but they ended up forming an alliance with the Island of Storms in a dramatic manner. Although they didn't understand the details of the negotiation between the Great Elder, the Elf King, and Richard, the dragons and knights were finally relieved to be able to get rid of the control of the contract. Great Elder Gomiria's authority was second only to Dragon Emperor Palgoris among the dragons, so no one, including the 2 elders of the Red Dragon and Gold Dragon, questioned this decision. In fact, there must be an inside story. During the conversation, Chenrui figured out the reason why Rala ran away from home 20,000 years ago. To be honest, this escape was really tough. Later, his father-in-law came to smash and rob them, which was even more embarrassing. The title of Elf King did not refer to the supreme ruler of the elves. Since the goddess of moonlight worshipped by the elves was a female, the emperors of all generations were female elves. Even the most outstanding male could not become an elven emperor. Only the most powerful elves who had made great contributions to the elven race could receive the special title of king. Not only did this signify their authority and status second only to the queen, but it also represented the highest honor. In the long history of the elves, there were only a handful of elves who were crowned as king. Span. Savatiga was the first demigod powerhouse in the Emerald Forest Sea tens of thousands of years ago. His strength was well known on the mainland. As a famous handsome man, artist, and magic circle master of the elves, Span was the dream lover of countless elven girls. He was once considered the best marriage partner of the elven empress at that time. However, in the end, this powerful elf chose his former rival, the fairy dragon Marilla. This matter caused a sensation among the elves. Span was also ostracized by the Elder Council, and had to leave the Emerald Forest Sea in low spirits. Later on, a major event occurred in the Jadeite Forest Sea. A group of corrupted elves held the elven empress hostage and controlled her, and attempted to lay their hands on the sacred tree of nature. Their leader was Great Elder Ivret, who instigated Span to leave. At the critical moment of life and death for the elves, Span let go of the former grudges, broke into the forest together with the fairy dragon, killed Ivret and other fallen elves, and sealed the power of destruction of the cursed nature tree at the cost of lowering his own strength, saving the entire elves. Span was also conferred as the Elven King, and his heroic deeds were praised by the elves for generations. The glorious deeds of the elven father-in-law made Shinrei speechless. It turned out that the strength of the elven father-in-law was demigod, but because he saved the tree of nature, his strength was lowered to the kingdom level, and because of the curse, he could never break through again in his life. In fact, after sealing the tree of nature, Span's condition was very bad. His vitality suddenly fell to the lowest point. It was Marilla who cast a secret skill to share her lifespan to give half of her lifespan to her lover, which saved the elf's life. This incident made Shinrei have a further understanding of the love between the father-in-law and his wife. He also vaguely understood why the tree of nature in the Emerald Forest Sea would wither day by day. It should be because Span's seal could no longer contain the curse of destruction. There were some things that Shinrei couldn't say clearly, so he just told them his real name, and some things related to Rala. After learning that their daughter was in the demon realm, the Elven King and the Fairy Dragon didn't have any special resistance to this son-in-law who might be the demons. It was already a great surprise to get the news of their daughter's safety. The previous, technical seminar, of ancient runes made Shinrei very lucky to get the appreciation of the Elven King. In contrast, the Great Elder of the Fairy Dragon was not easy to deal with. In Shinrei's previous world, he had heard countless stories of mothers-in-law linked to keywords such as reality, betrothal gifts, terms, and so on. Some of them were even sad and weird. Although the dimensions were different, some commonalities undoubtedly exist. As a woman who had been fooled by a man once, a mother-in-law was naturally incomparable to a daughter. The first question of the fairy dragon mother-in-law hit Shinrei's weakness. How many wives do you have? She is indeed the great elder of Ryuzaku. Her political sense is really strong. Shinrei wanted to imitate the elf father-in-law and ask, what, blankly, but the reality was cruel. It was impossible to fool around like this. He had to answer vaguely. More than one. And emphasized that Rala was the most precious one. The fairy dragon mother-in-law was obviously not satisfied with this answer, but unexpectedly she didn't ask. How many good sisters do you have? Instead, she asked, is Rala the most powerful? Even though those who could become dragon riders were geniuses that were 1 in 10,000, and many of them were proud and arrogant, in the face of this mysterious powerhouse who could defeat the red and gold dragons, and who had signed a contract with the Great Elder, they still maintained a considerable amount of respect. Shinrei nodded and followed the dragon rider into the valley. After a careful inspection, Shinrei nodded and casually pointed at one of the dragon riders in the third squad. Everyone has worked hard. Stay here and help me with the final setup and inspection. The rest of you can go and rest. The dragon riders bowed and took their leave. The dragon rider looked at Chunrui, wanting to say something but hesitating. Chunrui smiled at him and activated the magic formation. "All right, this way the people outside won't be able to hear us. What I want to say is, it's been a long time, Your Excellency Golden Knight and Dragon Rider. Perhaps I'll have to call you a real Dragon Rider soon?" The Dragon Rider revealed an excited expression and knelt on one knee. "It really is you! His Royal Highness!" This Dragon Rider was Samuel, who had sworn loyalty to Chunrui. After successfully passing the first round of tests in Ryuzaku, Samuel qualified for the second round of tests this time. As long as he passed the test, he would become an official Dragon Rider. As Chunrui had removed all mental links during the battle at Warlock Fortress, Samuel had once thought that this highness had fallen. He was inexplicably sad and depressed. Later, when he received a message from Aina and learned that his lordship was still alive, he regained his confidence and fighting spirit. After Chunrui rescued Aina in the Plain of Nightmares, to prevent Samuel from worrying, he had specially asked Shura to entrust her to pass on the message. Now that she was able to reunite with Samuel on the Island of Storms, she was naturally very happy. Previously, due to the special circumstances, it was inconvenient for them to contact each other. Now, she finally had the opportunity. The blood oath of light no longer exists. We are friends, there is no need for such etiquette. Samuel did not obey. Instead, he lowered his head and said, "I know that my strength is limited, and I may become a burden to your highness, but please give me a chance. I will work hard to become stronger so that I have the qualifications to truly follow your highness. As for the blood oath of light, since I pledged my loyalty to your highness, it has been buried deep in my soul. Unless it is completely annihilated, the oath will never be invalid, unless your highness is willing to grant me annihilation." Chunrui sighed and stepped forward to help Samuel up. "Your loyalty makes me feel ashamed. In fact, I do not have much ambition. Please allow me to boldly guess that it is not that your highness does not have ambition, but your ambition is too great. Especially after witnessing your highness's current strength, I have confirmed some of the assumptions in my heart." Samuel shook his head. "However, I will not probe into your highness's secrets. I only wish for your highness to give me this honor and opportunity. All right, if you are not afraid of being implicated or being disappointed." Chunrui patted Samuel's shoulder. "However, there is no need for the blood oath of light. You only need to remember one thing. Even without Arthur, without your highness, Samuel is still a friend whom I can entrust my back to." Samuel's eyes lit up, and he nodded vigorously. "By the way, your highness, I have another request. Since you are in charge of this trial, can you let me get third place?" Chunrui was stunned. He knew that Samuel was never the kind of person who would cheat. There must be a special reason for this request. Chapter 844. Sure enough, Samuel immediately said the reason for cheating. Cheating is a shameless act that shames honor and fairness. Samuel smiled bitterly. "However, my strength is not enough to get the third place. In order to get the third place prize, Holy Marrow Fruit, I can only do this." "Holy Marrow Fruit? Is it a treasure that can improve strength?" Samuel hesitated a little. "It has nothing to do with improving strength, but it is the only thing that can save that, sir." "That Royal Highness?" Chunrui was startled. Samuel's loyalty to him is beyond doubt, but now he would rather violate the rules and cheat to get the Holy Marrow Fruit to save that, sir, instead of His Majesty. This made Chunrui a little puzzled. Samuel seemed to be even more surprised, and he asked tentatively, "Don't you remember, your highness?" Chunrui felt more and more strange. "I once told you that after I fell into the demon realm, I lost a lot of memories." "Who is the sir you mentioned? Your highness really doesn't remember." Samuel's expression was a little weird. He hesitated for a moment, and he finally said a name. "Madame Veronica?" As soon as this name fell into Chunrui's ears, a memory fragment deep in his soul suddenly trembled and fluctuated uncontrollably. In the vibration, a pair of beautiful eyes as deep as the ocean gradually became clear. In the gentle eyes there was a touch of sadness. This was the memory fragment from the body's original owner, the third prince of the Long Huang Empire, Arthur. Although Chunrei had integrated with Arthur's memory as the main body, even with his current strength, he still couldn't erase or forget this pair of eyes that left the deepest impression. Chunrei's heart beat fiercely. The last time he watched the duel between Paul and Samuel in the royal arena of the Long Huang Empire's capital Yerodisha appeared in his mind. The woman with a veil also had this pair of blue eyes. The owner of this pair of eyes was Arthur's greatest obsession. Even though his consciousness had already dissipated, he was still persistent. Chunrei's breathing became a little heavy, and he took a deep breath to suppress his abnormal emotions. Samuel saw this scene and sighed softly. As expected, even if your highness has forgotten many things, you still can't forget her. Please rest assured, your highness. The King family and I will do our best to protect that, sir, until your highness returns to the Empire and takes back everything that belongs to you, including that, sir. Veronica. Chunrei muttered the name that made Arthur's soul in his heart, while suppressing and adapting to the throbbing. Suddenly he understood something. Is this the reason why you cheated to get the sacred marrow fruit? To put it bluntly, Samuel wanted to get the sacred marrow fruit at all costs to save the Sir, who had an unusual relationship with Arthur, because of him, the third prince. That Sir's body has always been unwell. This time, it happened to be the time when the sacred marrow fruit matured, and it was taken by Ryuzuku as a prize, so Samuel lowered his head and said, I have already made a military order in front of His Majesty regarding this matter. I'm very lucky to have a friend like you. Chunrei shook his head. But this is the last time. You don't need to do this in the future unless there is a special request from me. Some things in the past, my current situation. If it is not necessary, I will not deliberately touch it again. I'm sorry, Your Highness. I acted on my own this time. Samuel knelt on one knee again. If I may be so bold, the identity of that, sir. After all, it is a bit awkward. It is good that Your Highness can see through this. Your Highness' official fiancée is the pearl of the Ryo Empire, Princess Rambus. This princess is more suitable for Your Highness in terms of status and intelligence. Moreover, the Ryo Empire has the support of the Holy Church and the elves. If Your Highness wants to plan something big, this force must not be ignored. Awkward identity? Rambus? Planning something big? Chunrei understood that the Golden Knight might have misunderstood something, but it was not convenient to explain now. He could only help Samuel up. I know that you are very conflicted about cheating. You can participate in the trial without worry, regardless of success or failure. As for the sacred marrow fruit, I will ask the great Elder Maria for it. If there are no accidents, it should not be a big problem. No matter what happened between me and Veronica in the past, now that Arthur has disappeared, after you complete the sacred marrow fruit mission, the related events will come to an end. No matter what my future plan is, and no matter whether there will be a third prince in the Long Huang Empire, the strength of you and the Tribuk family is the most fundamental condition. Do you understand? Yes, Your Highness. Samuel looked quite excited. Being able to put aside everything and really participate in the trial was what the Golden Knight wanted most. Of course, the means of this his lord were even more admirable. In addition to defeating the two super powerhouses of the dragons, he also established an equal cooperation relationship with the powerful Great Elder of the Dragons. Of course, the Golden Knight did not know that the so-called equal was actually based on having sex with the Great Elder's daughter. Your strength has made a big breakthrough again. You are only one step away from the peak of pseudo-saint. I can imagine what kind of training you have experienced. If I have time in the next few days, I will give you some pointers. When you break through to the peak of pseudo-saint in the future, I will give you a special power so that you can realize and step into the real saint level as soon as possible. What Chunrei was talking about was the bestowal of stars. The current quota of bestowal of stars was full, but as long as he broke through to the next Polaris Emperor, the number of bestowal of stars would definitely increase. At that time, he would bestow an S-level title to Samuel, which would naturally allow him to realize the power of Demon Overlord, Saint level, in advance. With the previous realization and the refinement and accumulation of the basic star power, this breakthrough would not take too long. "Thank you, Your Highness!" Samuel had no doubt about this, because he had witnessed the miracles that Her Highness had created with his own eyes. Putting aside the black potions and legendary equipment, just in terms of strength alone, Her Highness was an existence that could only rival him back then. Now, he could only look up to her, completely look up to her. After Samuel left, Chenrui fell into deep thought. It was not because of the mysterious woman, Veronica, who aroused Arthur's excitement, but because the grand plan that Samuel mentioned gave him a germination of inspiration. Although it was only a germination or even a fantasy, just like the fundraising door that was initially planned in the dark moon, the seemingly impossible plan eventually became the key to determining the fate of the entire fallen angel empire. At that time, he was just a powerless weakling. Of course, it was still just an idea at present. If he wanted to realize it, he needed to work hard step by step. Chenrui found Maria and said that he wanted the holy marrow fruit. The great elder of the fairy dragon handed the fruit to him without hesitation. "Thank you, Madame Maria." Chenrui didn't expect his picky mother-in-law to be so straightforward. She didn't even ask for the reason. "What about the prize? Although the holy marrow fruit is rare, Ryuzuka still has two. I will say that I used it for my own training, and Her Majesty Palgoris won't say anything. Anyway, remember to treat our Rala well. If I find out that you favor one and discriminate against the other, I will kill all your other women." Although Maria said ruthlessly, she had actually regarded this son-in-law as one of her own. When it came to being protective, it was not only the father-in-law, the Elf King. In fact, the Elf King also missed one thing. After the Elf King beat up the second elder of the dragons, Perrin united several elders to go to the Dragon Emperor to complain and ask for Span to be severely punished. In the end, they were intercepted by Maria. After some persuasion, these bruised elders finally gave up completely. Not only that, Maria also went to the Dragon Emperor Palgoris to complain that Perrin's son, Carlo, had ill intentions towards Rala, causing Rala to go missing. In fact, Palgoris was very clear that Carlo was purely abused by Rala, but considering the great elder's anger at losing his daughter, he could only turn a blind eye. Not only did he not ask about the Elf King's actions of robbing and the great elder's persuasion of the elders, he even used a strategy of appeasing Maria. In any case, after this incident, Perrin and the other dragons would avoid the great elder in fear. "Richard!" Span rushed over excitedly with something in his hand. The Elf King knew that Chenrui's real name was a secret, so he only called him by an alias. "This combat tool of yours for the final trial is too interesting. Not only can it fight alone, it can also be used as a team. It has endless uses. By the way, what is it called?" "Lord Span, you can call it the Magic Game Helmet. The battle inside is actually just a part of the Magic Game Endless Warrior Online that I created, or a small dungeon. What an amazing creation! You are a peerless genius." Span was not stingy with his praise for Chenrui. After thinking for a while, he said, "Unfortunately, the power of the kingdom stored in the mystic crystal is not enough, and it is difficult to use those above this level. Otherwise, even I would want to go in and start a massacre. If possible, can you improve it a little? In addition to humans, you can reflect the characteristics of dragons and elves into this magic game, so that the trial takers can combine their own characteristics and display greater power." "Race settings?" Chenrui nodded. This was actually one of his ideas for upgrading the next version of the game, but Span's words reminded Chenrui that in addition to demons and humans, special races such as dragons, elves, goblins, dwarves, and orcs should also be considered. Looking at his father-in-law whose eyes were shining, Chenrui asked tentatively, "This magic game can further enhance one's combat ability. If Lord Spen needs, I can improve it and provide the complete version to dragons and dragon knights for training or entertainment. Of course, it also includes the elves, as a gift for cooperation. But there is one condition: I will not provide the technology, only the finished product. Let's see the effect of this trial first. If it is really good, then I believe His Majesty Palgoris will be happy to accept this gift. Although Maria had not tried this magic game herself, she trusted her husband's taste. Something that could make Span praise it like that must be something amazing. It seemed like her daughter's taste was quite good. Chenrui's eyes brightened, and he nodded. This time coming to the human world, there was really a lot of unexpected gains. 3 days later, the trial officially began. Looking at the dragon knights who entered the trial, especially the spirited Samuel, Chenrui revealed a knowing smile, because he knew that no matter what the result was this time, this gold knight who had put down his psychological burden would no longer have any regrets. Chapter 845. The Dragon Knight trial was successfully completed. This trial consisted of 3 major tests: magic traps, actual combat between titans and wind elementals, and the small instance dungeon of Endless Warrior Online. These 3 tests were more comprehensive than ordinary tests. They specifically took into account all levels of strength, especially the magic trial of Endless Warrior Online. The method was novel and mysterious. It was extremely difficult. Not only did it reflect individual strength, but more importantly, teamwork. The version that Chenrui provided for the trial this time was actually a simplified version left from the previous testing of the game. One could only enter a simple instance dungeon. Even so, it still aroused the strong interest of the dragons and dragon knights. Under the strong request of the participants, the test of Endless Warrior Online was repeated 3 times. Chenrui did not give Samuel the opportunity to practice in advance, but the Golden Knight's experience in the demon realm and the human world played a considerable role. Although he was not the strongest, he could organize teammates to fight effectively and grasp the best opportunity. He received high praise from the dragons. In the end, he ranked 10th with a total score, which was above several real saint-level powerhouses. It was already a very good result. The effect and response of the Storm Island trial were unexpectedly good. Even the Red Dragon Elder, who still had some doubts about Chenrui, had to be impressed. This time, Chenrui repaired part of the facilities of Skywheel on the Storm Island and created a core device that integrated the heart of the devout. It was equivalent to building a simplified version of Endless Warrior Online on the Storm Island. However, whether it was the core device or the mystic crystal on the magic helmet, the energy was limited. Once it disappeared, it had to be manually replenished. This meant that if the dragons and dragon knights wanted to try this magic game again, they had to come to the Storm Island again. Of course, this was only a temporary measure during the transition period. Chenrui's idea was to create a version of Endless Warrior in the human world. With the ruins of Skywheel as the core, he would spread Endless Warrior Online to the human world step by step. However, there was a huge technical problem. The biggest problem was that the core of the magic game was the life crystal of the ancient civilization. The City of Stars was definitely unable to reach the human world from the demon realm, and the life crystal of Skywheel had long been destroyed by Chenrui because it was out of control. Therefore, they needed to create a replacement core crystal. This crystal did not need any other functions. It was only used for the control of the game and the output of faith. As long as this problem could be solved, it wouldn't be impossible to spread Infinite Warrior Online to the dragons, elves, and even the entire human world. Regardless of whether it was in terms of faith income or the long-term strategy of the surface world, it was a huge breakthrough. After the dragon's trial ended, the Griffin Knights returned to the Long Huang Empire. Maria and Span returned to Ryuzuku with the dragons and dragon knights. Before leaving, Span gave Chenrui a booklet that recorded his experience in magic circles. Span's magic circle had reached the realm of Grand Master, so this booklet was naturally priceless. From the lines, it should be rushed out in the past few days. Chinrui held the booklet, and he felt warm in his heart. Chinrui did not go directly to the Long Huang Empire. Instead, he gave the holy marrow fruit to Samuel. After commanding the giants to further loot the ruins of Skywheel, he opened the Star Gate and returned to the Demon Realm's Dark Moon residence. As soon as he returned, he saw a circle of people in the yard. Paglio, Crobolus, Athena, Kia, Isabella, Alice, Lomont, Delia, Oliphius, Adeline, Helen, plus Dodo. Except for Rala, who was behind closed doors, and Jia, who was too busy to get away, the people in the small group had basically arrived. The atmosphere seemed a bit weird. Chinrui was startled. This is obviously the posture of a public trial. I remember the last time, the time before that, including the time before that, I was the target of the public trial, but this time it seems to be someone else who is unlucky. The little Loli's eyes were the sharpest. She immediately saw Chinrui. She jumped over happily and held his arm affectionately. "Brother, come quickly!" Chinrui felt that this little Loli deliberately stuck her body on his arm in front of Isabella and others. Although the little Loli was only a green apple that had just taken shape, there was a different feeling. Before Chinrui could break free, his other arm was also held. This time it was the Black Dragon Girl. "Boss, you are back!" After witnessing Chinrui killing her enemy, the dragon-lit Yukers, in the alchemist contest, the knot in the Black Dragon Girl's heart was finally completely untied. In addition, the power of the evil pupil continued to weaken and dissolve that trace of spiritual imprint. The phenomenon of Oliphius's attack was getting shorter and shorter, and she inexplicably had a kind of attachment or dependence on Chinrui similar to Isabella. Although Athena's smile was very generous, Isabella's smile seemed indifferent, and only the little maid curled her lips in dissatisfaction. Chinrui was still a little scared. He gently broke away from the hands of the two little girls, walked over, and diverted his attention by asking, "What are you doing?" "Boss, we are interrogating Lomont," the Black Dragon Girl answered first. "Lomont?" Chinrui was taken aback, and he looked at his nephew, who was restless in the center of the circle. When Chinrui looked at the cold face of Delia, he immediately guessed a few things in his heart. This guy has always been the first to jump out to add insult to injury in the past few times. I didn't expect this day to come. Lomont was originally like a frosted eggplant. When he saw Chinrui, it was as if he saw a savior. He came over crying and hugged his uncle's leg. "Leader! Help! Don't drag me down if you want to die!" Chinrui was shocked, and he said to the crowd without blushing, "I don't know this person." "Uncle!" Lomont howled. "What did you mean by that? By the way, don't do it for the sake of the monk. For the sake of my aunt, you must prove my innocence." "Are you sure the word innocence has anything to do with you?" Chinrui shook his leg hard, but this guy seemed to be glued to his leg. He just wouldn't let go. Chinrui could only helplessly ask, "Who can tell me, what did this guy do?" "It's all because he messed with another woman." The little Loli shook her head and sighed like an old man. His aunt also sighed softly. "This time, I won't help you, Lomont. I'm firmly on Delia's side." Athena didn't say anything. She just patted Delia's back comfortingly. Delia's eyes were a little red, but she didn't say anything. "Tell me." Chinrui knocked on the head of the guy who was hugging his leg. "Which widow did you mess with this time?" "Wow, boss, you're amazing. You can even guess this?" the Black Dragon chick asked in surprise. As the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. The men who are with him are all bad guys. The Little Mermaid Princess who had a sharp tongue and a big shot was undoubtedly the Little Mermaid Princess. Ms. Betty glanced at Master Poison Dragon vigilantly. Master Poison Dragon, who was shot in the knee, didn't dare to say much, lest he become the target of misfortune. "Actually, it's that Metaloo," Lomont said with a sad face. "I really have nothing to do with her. I only saved her at Jurgo Fortress." "Captain, you were the one who arranged for me to save her," Athena finally said with dissatisfaction. "If there's nothing, will Metaloo come to the Dark Moon to find you?" And the regent of the Shadow Empire, Florence, Also use diplomatic channels to pressure my sister to marry this guy. The little loli threw another bombshell. It's fine if he's a mistress, but he actually wants to marry her. It was the little maid who added insult to injury this time. Under the continuous bombardment, Master Lomont's HP plummeted, and his equipment was about to drop. Chunrei then understood what happened. Lomont wants to marry into the Shadow Empire? By the way, Medalu? Jurgo Fortress? Chunrei finally remembered that this mistress, Medalu, was the daughter of Catherine's uncle, the current regent of the Shadow Empire, Florence, and also Brock's wife. Back then, Brock schemed to save Florence, and became the son-in-law of this uncle. After relying on Florence's relationship to become the #1 figure in the Shadow Empire's military, he showed his ferocious side. He brought Florence and his daughter to Jurgo Fortress and imprisoned them in order to threaten Catherine. Not only that, he also used the soul shackles to control Medalu and often tortured her. Especially after Brock lost half of his body and became unconscious, it became even more severe. She was tortured to the point where she could neither live nor die. It was not until Chunrei took Lomont to Jurgo Fortress to deal with Brock that she was rescued by Lomont. Perhaps it was for this reason that Medalu, who was physically and mentally traumatized, had a good impression of Lomont. Chunrei finally understood the reason for this public trial conference. It was true that his nephew liked to flirt, but he still ran back to serve Delia every time. Delia also turned a blind eye to this, but the nature this time was completely different. However, Chunrei was very clear about this guy's character. It was impossible for him to give up Delia because he was greedy for beauty and power. I arranged for you to save her, but I didn't arrange for you to hook up or anything. You're about to be the son-in-law of the regent of the Shadow Empire. The road ahead is smooth. Congratulations, Royal Highness Lomont. Chunrei kicked his nephew into the abyss with one sentence. I've also seen that Medalu. Asmodeus' royal family, a beauty, plus the power of the Shadow Empire. If it's me, I don't have to consider at all. Why are you still pretending here? Why are you hesitating? Lomont was in a cold sweat. Uncle-in-law doesn't take revenge like this. Delia was really angry. I remember that time in the Silent Night wetland. You seemed to entrust Delia to me. Okay, you go and be the son-in-law of the prince. I'll take care of Delia. Everyone was dumbfounded. What kind of plot twist was this? My friend's wife isn't polite? Only Delia and Lomont vaguely understood that Chunrei deliberately mentioned the Silent Night wetland incident. At that time, the three of them were not very strong. Facing Brock's sneak attack, it was already a matter of life and death. Lomont wanted to use his life to drag Brock out, so he said to let Chunrei take care of Delia. Similarly, Delia also wanted to use her life to protect Lomont. For a moment, both Delia and Lomont understood the captain's intention. They had experienced such hardships and pain together. They could give up their lives for each other without hesitation. What difficulties couldn't they overcome? What path couldn't they walk hand in hand? Finally, Delia's gaze gradually became soft. Athena, Isabella, and others saw it and nodded secretly. Shameless, despicable! The little mermaid princess who didn't understand looked at Chunrei with even more contempt. Master is so powerful! The slime who didn't understand but thought it was awesome looked at Chunrei with even more admiration. Chapter 846. Lomont was actually very unlucky. Although he had a little ambiguous relationship with Medalu in Jurgo Fortress before, he only told her his real name. He didn't disclose anything else, including that he was in the Dark Moon. After that, he left Jurgo Fortress and disappeared without a trace. Just like the usual style of a widow-controlling playboy, I came valiantly and left unrestrained. I hid my identity and name deeply without leaving any traces. However, he still had to pay for what he had done. At the Capital Alchemist contest, as the representative of the Shadow Empire's emperor, Regent Florence accidentally discovered this savior, Lomont. The experienced regent did not immediately contact Lomont, but he sent someone to investigate secretly. He found that Lomont seemed to be extremely familiar with the Dark Moon Lord, Athena, and others. After the contest, they returned to the Dark Moon Estate together. He was sure that Lomont was in the Dark Moon Estate. When Metallo of the Shadow Empire received the news from her father, she immediately rushed to the Dark Moon Estate. As a result, she accidentally met Delia. Delia was the sister of Metallo's ex-husband. When they were controlled by Brock, they were in the same boat. Delia escaped from Brock's eyes and ears and went to the Silent Night wetland with the help of Metallo. In the end, Brock died, and the soul shackles that tortured Metallo and Delia were eliminated. This was the first time the two met after Delia escaped. It was originally a surprise reunion, but when Metallo shyly asked Delia to inquire about a person, the surprise turned into a shocking change, and the toilet turned into a tragic one. Lomont just lied down and hit the muzzle. After Chunrei's ingenious coordination, the contradictions among the people finally subsided. Of course, the way to mediate the contradictions was indeed a bit strange. The little mermaid princess's poisonous tongue, the little lowly's heartbroken expression, the little maid's resentful eyes, Madame Ant's note. "So you have been eyeing Delia for a long time," plus Master Poison Dragon standing in front of Miss Betty vigilantly, and other scenes made Chunrei feel like he shot himself in the foot. Now that Metallo was still in the Dark Moon, and the diplomatic pressure of the Shadow Empire still existed, the matter had not been resolved. Prince Florence raised this matter to Jia in the name of gratitude. The regent of the Shadow Empire was recruiting a civilian of the fallen Angel Empire. This was a great benefit for Lomont personally and the friendship between the two empires. Due to various considerations, this recruitment was only proposed to Jia in private by the envoy of the Shadow Empire. It was not officially made public. After Isabella, Athena and others had a long talk with Delia, Isabella appeared as Lomont's aunt and met the mistress, Metallo. In fact, Metallo had never known the relationship between Delia and Lomont. She was still waiting for news in the hotel arranged by Delia. After listening to Isabella's explanation of the whole thing, Metallo looked very surprised. Only then did she know that Lomont's lover turned out to be Delia. Delia escaped at all costs and endured the pain of soul shackles for Lomont. Then, the purpose of Lomont's desperate fight with Brock in Jurgle Fortress was very clear. The dejected Metallo did not continue to pester, and she quietly left the Dark Moon. According to an informer, Metallo, who was in a low mood, met Delia, who escorted Lomont on the outskirts of the city. The three seemed to have talked for a long time. Due to the vigilance of the parties, the specific content of the conversation was unknown. However, when Metallo left in the end, her pace seemed to be much lighter. Soon after, the envoy of the Shadow Empire left the capital of the fallen Angel Empire, and the recruitment seemed to be unsettled. Next, Chunrei focused all his energy on the City of Stars. There were two most important tasks. First, the experiment of the game Core Crystal. Second, the manufacture of Titan. In addition, the version upgrade of Endless Warrior Online and the production of the Human World game version were also put on the agenda. The central life crystal of the ancient civilization was unique, which meant that only one crystal could exist in a city to control the entire city and alchemy creatures. However, the capital of a civilization above level 5 had a sub-body function. It could separate the life crystal clone with lower authority than the main body. With the clone crystal as the core, a level 2 city controlled by the capital was established, and it gradually expanded into a real kingdom. This was the origin of the ancient alchemy civilization kingdom, or empire. The City of Stars was currently only a level 3 civilization city. Based on the current conditions, it was basically impossible to reach level 4, let alone level 5, capital. However, what Chunrei wanted was not to control and create a new city function, but just a game machine CPU. Now that Endless Warrior Online had a lot of data and reference materials, according to Crystal Phoenix's deduction, this idea was completely possible, but it required the most critical material, Spirit Crystal. Spirit Crystal was the foundation of the crystal, life element. It was irreplaceable. Even in the plane, where the ancient alchemy civilization was located, it was also an extremely rare existence. As long as he could get this kind of spirit crystal, not only could he successfully create the game control core crystal that Chenrui wanted, but he could also greatly enhance the ability of Crystal Phoenix. He could even have the power comparable to the core crystal of a level 4 or 5 civilization. As for the Titan, Crystal Phoenix had mastered and integrated all the relevant information of Deluta's design crystal board, and she gave a manufacturing plan. Except for the indispensable wind core of the wind elementals, the rest of the materials had been sorted out and calculated. Judging from the current inventory, there was only one kind of main material that was in short supply, which was the thunder salt needed to build the Titan's body. Thunder salt was a magic material that could conduct and amplify wind magic without resistance. This material was not particularly rare in the demon realm, but it was generally used as an additive in the production of weapons or items. The amount needed was not much, and the production was relatively limited. According to the situation that Chenrui grasped, the thunder salt in all the magic stores in the Dark Moon City was only enough to make one Titan's arm. It seemed that the next step was to purchase a large amount of thunder salt. As for the control of the Titan, there was no need to worry. The Titan leader, Oceanus, had already offered the commander's will, which was absorbed by Chenrui's spiritual imprint. He only needed to inject the power of will into every produced Titan's soul, and it would absolutely obey Chenrui. However, there was a premise that this power of will could not subdue the Titan who was also a leader. Once a mutated Titan leader appeared, other methods were needed. If it was really uncontrollable, he could consider destroying it. On this day, Chenrui was debugging the new race version of Endless Warrior Online in the City of Stars when he suddenly received a text message from Isabella, asking him to return to the Dark Moon House quickly. Chenrui knew that Isabella would not summon him for no reason, so he immediately put down the work at hand, opened the Stargate, and returned to the house. As soon as he came out of the space gate, he saw a distinguished guest, a familiar distinguished guest. Chenrui was startled, and he quickly saluted. Sir Augilus! It turned out that the person who came to the Dark Moon was the Dragon Emperor's father-in-law, Augilus. Compared with the last time, Augilus's breath seemed more restrained. There was no special power on the surface, and his eyes were more crystal clear. The more he looked at it, the more blurred his facial features became, and the deterrence that penetrated deep into the soul became clearer. Chenrui only felt this kind of feeling from Satan and Raphael. Although Augilus gave Chenrui a much inferior feeling, there was no doubt that this was a sign that his strength had reached a certain height. As he did not activate the polar transformation, Augilus's strength was always displayed as unable to judge in analytical eyes. Recalling the pseudo-god level dragon power essence obtained after defeating the Saint Dragon Rodriguez, Chenrui's eyes lit up. Sir Augilus, have you successfully stepped into the pseudo-god level? Augilus smiled slightly and did not speak. A strange light appeared in his eyes, and his gaze suddenly became ethereal. When Chenrui met that gaze, he felt as if he had fallen into the endless starry sky, unable to extricate himself. His mind was stunned. His consciousness turned into the galaxy of the supersystem, including the starry sky, and he finally got rid of the power of that gaze. Augilus did not use his full strength just now, but he did not expect Chenrui to get rid of it so quickly. He was slightly surprised. As he was about to increase his strength and try again, the figure of the black dragon chick appeared next to Chenrui. She held the boss's arm. Dad! The boss is here. You should give the prize. As soon as the black dragon chick appeared, the deterrence of Sir Dragon Emperor that was as deep as the sea suddenly disappeared. Especially when he saw the intimate action between his daughter and Chenrui, the smile on his face was even wider. He was a kind father without any airs. Chenrui was taken aback. What reward? Euchalius died in your hands, right? Augilus said. Although your strength has increased compared to the last time, there is still a certain distance from the national level. Has Euchalius' power degraded to this level? Or did you use any other means? No. Dad, Oliphius said first. The boss is very powerful. The dragon lich who killed Mom was killed by the boss himself. Sister, Paglio, Betty, and the others can all testify. There were a lot of spectators that day. Dragon lich? There was a faint sadness in the depths of Aguilez's eyes. Euchelius actually took this step. In any case, Chunrei, thank you. This is what I should do. Since he is Olifius' enemy, he is also my enemy. Chunrei glanced at the black dragon chick. In fact, Euchelius was restricted by an ancient rune rule at that time, and his strength dropped a lot. Moreover, he couldn't use his phylactery to escape or be reborn. Otherwise, I might not have been able to destroy him. Aguilez nodded approvingly. I came here mainly for two things. First, I will remove the control of the spiritual imprint on Olifius, but I can see that her spiritual imprint has been weakened by more than half. It will be completely eliminated soon, so there is no need for me to do it. The second thing is the cause of Euchelius' death. These two things, you have done very well. I am very satisfied. What reward do you want? Just tell me. Chunrei felt that the black dragon chick's hand holding his arm tightened. He glanced at her and found that the chick's eyes had turned into $. He couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Suddenly, he had an idea. I need a lot of thunderite, the more the better, and crystal. I don't know if Sir can fulfill these two wishes. Crystal, it is a bit troublesome. I can only provide some clues. As for thunderite, it is not a problem. I brought a dragon's this time. He once defeated the blue dragon Elder Saurian in a gambling fight and won a huge wind dragon island. There is a massive amount of high-purity thunderite ore on that island. Chapter 847. Strange Challenge? Looking at Aguilez's strange eyes, Chunrei was puzzled, but Sir Dragon Emperor did not continue to speak. He just drank his wine. Looking at his father-in-law's intention, it seemed that he wanted him to negotiate with the dragons. The dragons actually have an island with so many high-purity thunderite. If they can negotiate, then the Titan's biggest problem will be solved. Chunrei thought of this and did not ask Aguilez anymore. He followed Olifius to the yard. Before walking to the yard, he heard a strange voice from afar. Beautiful Miss Isabella, your beauty and charm are extremely touching, especially when you make the tea beverage. Your elegance and temperament are rare in my life. Even if I just look at it from a distance, I still feel intoxicated. I'm willing to spend 1,000 years, no, 10,000 years waiting for your gentle and understanding smile. Please accept this top-grade emerald rose. It represents my most sincere admiration. Madame Ant smiled and said, It's really a touching compliment. Unfortunately, as I said, I already have a man I like, so we can only be friends. Having said that, this rose is really charming, sigh. It doesn't matter. Friendship and love are, in fact, sincere feelings. Please accept this, as a witness to the beginning of our sincere feelings. Chunrei's face showed a strange expression. Before he could react, the voice sounded again. Miss Kia, you are also a charming and peerless beauty. I almost can't confess my admiration and love for you because you are too perfect. I'm sorry, I already have a man. However, Sir's confession is really touching. I suddenly feel so conflicted. Sigh, then I'll accept Sir's blue jadeite bird ring to prove our friendship. I'll accept and feel your feelings with all my heart. But now, it's just pure friendship. Chunrei's eyes widened a little. Logically speaking, this bastard intends to hook up with my beloved woman. I should go up and step on his face, but he was more dumbfounded at this time because the voice was obviously female. This is the dragons who came with Aguilez? A female dragon that seduces beautiful women? Chunrei finally understood the meaning of his father-in-law's strange gaze. At this moment, Olifius, who was beside him, suddenly disappeared with a whoosh. Olifius's eager voice sounded in the yard. Lala Aria! I also want to prove my friendship. Lalaria? All right, she really was the legendary, lesbian. Ms. Olifius. Facing the black dragon chick, Lala's voice was inevitably a little weird. This, you have already proved several times. Prove it again, because I brought the boss here. That red coral earring will be the proof of our friendship. Boss? Lolly looked in the direction pointed by the black dragon chick. Chenrui, who was walking over, suddenly felt a powerful spirit power coming like a sharp arrow, penetrating straight into his soul. He immediately channeled the power of the super system to resist this power and move forward while devouring the invading power. Walking into the yard, Chenrui finally saw the true face of the weird female dragon, and his body almost trembled. Completely different from the tall and powerful female hero that he had imagined, this lesbian lady was only about 1.4 meters tall. She had a head full of short black hair, delicate and cute facial features, and her breasts were obviously not that big. She was just like a flat-chested loli. This Lolita had a mustache on her face and was wearing a gorgeous men's gown. Her self-proclaimed romantic appearance made people quite speechless. Sure enough, the products of the Dragon Island must be weird. It was worth mentioning that this loli's strength was quite amazing. The data in Analytical Eyes was Race, Dragons, Black Dragon, Comprehensive Strength Assessment SS, SS+, Physique, SS, SS+, Strength, SS, SS+, Spirit, SS, SS+, Speed, SS, SS+. Analysis, High Magic Resistance Physique, Element Devour, Magic Eyes of Mind, Rage. Danger Level, Extremely Dangerous. The Black Dragon Loli of the Peak Kingdom. There were also many skills and characteristics that looked quite powerful in the analysis. Chenrui was secretly vigilant. I can't be deceived by the appearance of this lesbian lady. The elders of the dragons are generally powerhouses above the national level. The bearded, flat loli once defeated the blue dragon elder in a gambling fight and won a huge island. Her strength should not be underestimated. The bearded, flat loli instantly appeared in front of Chenrui. She looked at him for a while and sneered disapprovingly. I thought the one who defeated Eucharius was a great powerhouse. I didn't expect it to be a guy who didn't even succeed in kingization. Eucharius' strength seems to have declined below the national level. He was actually killed by such an opponent. It's a shame for the dragons. Chenrui smiled slightly and didn't comment. Oliphius immediately said, Don't say that about the boss. The boss is very powerful. Powerful? The flat loli showed a scornful smile. Ms. Oliphius, don't be fooled by this kind of trash. Madam Lala. The little maidservant's dissatisfied voice sounded. Although I'm willing to be your friend, you've insulted the man I love the most, so our friendship ends here. I'll return this ring to you. Although the little maid deliberately refused and skillfully got the blue emerald bird ring from the bearded, flat loli, when she heard that Lolly spoke rudely to Chenrui, she immediately returned the ring to Lolly without hesitation. The bearded, flat loli was stunned. Ms. Kia. He is your man. Isn't this guy Ms. Oliphius' fiancé? Sigh. Madame Ant sighed faintly and handed over the gem rose regretfully. Kia is right, Madame Lolly. I'm sorry, I can only give up your gift and friendship. Wait a minute. Ms. Isabella. The bearded, flat loli was dumbfounded, and she immediately reacted. Is your man also like this? That's right, Madame Lolly. This time it was the venomous little mermaid Princess Helen who had been silent. Although I don't want to admit it, for some reason, my fate and future are also in the hands of this hateful guy. Lolly looked at Kia and Isabella, then looked at Oliphius and Helen, and shouted. I'm so angry! The bearded, flat loli's eyes emitted strong jealousy and hatred. She pointed at Chenrui and shouted. I want to duel with you! Duel your ass! Your whole family is a boss. Chenrui was speechless, and he shook his head. Madame Lolly, I think there is a little misunderstanding between us. It is Sir Augustus who asked me to come and negotiate with you. His Majesty Augustus? Lolly looked at the black dragon chick, and she finally stopped her anger. Humph! What is it? I need the Thunderous or on Wind Dragon Island, madam, please. Okay. If you win me, Wind Dragon Island will belong to you, and I can even give you a lot of wealth. If you lose, Miss Isabella, Miss Kia, and Miss Helen will be mine. Your engagement with Miss Oliphius will also be dissolved. Chinray frowned and said, But Sir Augustus said, even if it's His Majesty Dragon Emperor, you can't forcibly rob his private property. The bearded, flat lowly snorted coldly. Besides, I'm the heir to the throne appointed by His Majesty. Unless you can win me, you won't get a piece of thunderous ore. It turns out that this lowly is actually the heir of Dragon Island. In terms of talent and strength, she is well deserved. No wonder Augustus would bring her along. I have the most basic principle. Chinray shook his head resolutely. No matter what kind of bet, I will not use my lover and friends as chips. Before he finished speaking, the black dragon chick who was almost stunned by the island and a lot of wealth jumped out. Let's duel! Boss! I have no objection! Chinray, the bearded, flat, lowly immediately said. Even Miss Oliphius has agreed, you have no right to refuse. Let's do it this way, this bet is Miss Oliphius' freedom. If you lose, you must dissolve this deceptive marriage. Deceptive marriage? Who is deceiving who? The blue veins on Chinray's temples throbbed. It's obviously your Dragon Island's leader, Augustus, who forced this marriage, okay. Having said that, this deal is worthwhile no matter what. If I win, I can get the thunderous ore. If I lose, I can legitimately dissolve the engagement with the black dragon chick. Anyway, I have always treated this chick as my sister. If the boss wins, you can get an island and a lot of wealth. The black dragon chick, whose pupils had turned into black crystal coins, didn't even think about that freedom and the dissolution of the engagement if she lost. Now, her mind was full of money. I want dividends. Since my baby Oliphius wants to bet, then it's settled. I'll be the witness. Substitute. Chinray's answer turned out to be the Dragon Island's leader, Dragon Emperor, who had already appeared on the reclining chair in the yard. He was holding a bottle of the best yellow wine and slowly tasting it. Chinray was a little sweaty. This is your own baby daughter, and you actually use her as a bet? At the same time, the voice of the Dragon Island's leader sounded in Chinray's mind. If you lose, you're dead. Dragon Emperor Sir's daughter was lost by his son-in-law in gambling. No matter who she lost to, it was equivalent to giving Sir Dragon Emperor a slap in the face. This warning made the Dragon Island's leader's future son-in-law break out in cold sweat all of a sudden. Chinray's expression fell into the eyes of the flat, lowly, and she only thought that he was timid. She quickly added, Okay. With His Majesty as the witness, I have no opinion. The flat, lowly sneered in her heart, I'm known as the Dragon Island's king of gamblers. I win every bet. Isn't this kind of idiot easy to catch? By the way, I can't win too easily. I have to make this guy feel that I still have a chance to make a comeback. In addition to Ms. Oliphius, I'll bet Isabella, Kia, and Helen one by one until I lose everything. Just like when I dealt with Blue Dragon Elder Saurian. Saurian only gambled a mine at first, then 5-10. In the end, he even lost the entire island. Chinray was now forced to gamble. He had no choice but to gamble. Besides, the Thunderite was indeed something he urgently needed, so he immediately nodded. Okay. The flat, lowly smiled, and the two fake mustaches bounced. How do you want to bet?